The air is cold. Not the kind of cold you might expect from a place of endless sand and burning sun, but the true, quiet cold of a desert before dawn, when the sky is still a deep and heavy blue and the stars have not yet decided to leave. You can feel it on your arms. You can feel it in the way the air moves, slowly, like something that has been holding its breath all night and has not yet found a reason to exhale. You are standing at the edge of a plateau. The ground beneath your feet is pale limestone, worn smooth in some places, rough and crumbling at the edges, and it holds the faint memory of yesterday's heat somewhere deep inside it, though the surface is cool to the touch. There is sand here, too. There is always sand. It collects in the corners of things, in the spaces between stones, along the base of walls that are only beginning to take shape. If you kneel and press your hand flat against the earth, you can feel the fine, dry texture of it, like something ancient and patient, something that does not hurry. Somewhere behind you, a dog barks once. Then silence returns. In the distance, not so far that it disappears, but far enough that it does not yet feel real, there is a shape rising out of the darkness. Several shapes, in fact. They are enormous. They are so enormous that the mind takes a moment to understand what it is seeing, the way the eye sometimes struggles to process something that is simply too large for ordinary comparison. They are not complete, not yet, not in this particular year. But they are already here. Already rising. Already casting a presence over everything around them that has nothing to do with shadow, because the sun has not yet come. This is Giza. And this is the morning. The year, if you were to frame it in numbers, is somewhere near 2560 BCE. Which means that where you are standing right now is not the ruin-strewn, tourist-mapped plateau that the modern world will one day photograph and argue about and fly great distances to see. It is a construction site. It is a city. It is a living, breathing, working place, full of people who are only just beginning to stir from sleep. If this quiet journey into the past is the kind of thing that helps you unwind, you are very welcome to stay with us this evening. And if you would like another slow walk through history to be waiting for you whenever you are ready, you may like to subscribe, so the next doorway is always there when you need it. Now, come a little closer. Follow the path that winds down from the plateau and into the lower ground, where the buildings begin. These are not the grand temples or the ceremonial causeways you might have read about. These are smaller structures, low walls of mud brick, doorways with lintels of rough-cut limestone, rooftops flat enough to sleep on in the summer months. The streets between them are narrow and unpaved, and in some places the sand has drifted against the walls in gentle curves, as if the desert is slowly trying to reclaim what it briefly allowed to be built. There is smoke, now. The first thin threads of it rising from somewhere ahead, gray and soft against the still dark sky, carrying with them the earliest and most reliable signal that people are awake and morning has truly started. Someone has lit a fire. Someone is already at work. This is the workers' village, or at least one version of it, one neighborhood among several that have grown up here in the shadow of what is being built. Archaeologists will not find this place for a very long time. Not until 1990, when a horse will stumble near a modern road and its hoof will break through the surface of the earth and into the wall of an ancient building that has been waiting, quietly, for thousands of years. What they will eventually uncover is extraordinary, not for its grandeur, but for its completeness. The remains of bakeries, breweries, a medical facility, a fish processing area, the bones of cattle, the traces of organized, well-fed, surprisingly comfortable daily life. But tonight, this morning, in this cold hour before sunrise, none of that is ruin. All of it is simply here. The smell of bread is beginning now. It is faint, but it is real, something warm and floury that drifts out of the low openings in the bakery walls and moves through the street like a kind of early greeting. The bread that is made here is dense and dark, leavened with the same sourdough culture that has been kept alive in this kitchen for longer than anyone can remember. It is baked in clay pots, stacked in rows inside ovens that glow a deep orange from the coals below. By the time the sun is fully risen, hundreds of loaves will be ready, counted out and distributed to the workers who are beginning, even now, to move. A man appears in a doorway across the street. He is not young, but not old, somewhere in the middle of life, wearing a simple linen kilt that was probably white at some point and has since taken on the color of the dust. He stands in the doorway for a moment, doing nothing in particular. Looking at the sky, feeling the air, deciding something small, the way all people everywhere in all of history decide small things in the first minutes of the morning, before the day has asked anything of them yet. He was probably here yesterday. He will probably be here tomorrow. He is part of a team, a rotating crew of workers who come to Giza for several weeks at a time, then return to their home villages, then come back again. He is not a slave. This is important. He is a craftsman, a laborer, a man whose skills have been requested by the state, and whose food and shelter and medical care are being provided in return. He is, by the standards of his time, neither the most fortunate man in Egypt nor the least. He is, simply, a man who builds things. Large things. The largest things that have ever been built anywhere on Earth. His team has a name. Many of the teams do. Later, when certain tunnels inside these structures are explored, their names will be found painted on the stones they placed, casual, almost cheerful tags left behind in the dark. A small act of presence. A way of saying, we were here. We did this. Remember us, even if no one ever does. He turns back inside. From somewhere deeper in the building, a child's voice, just a murmur, not words, and then a woman's voice, low and even, answering. The small sounds of a household waking. Out on the plateau, the shapes of the pyramids are beginning, very slowly, to separate from the sky. The darkness is thinning at the eastern edge of the world, not yet sunrise, but the first faint promise of it, that particular gray-gold quality of light that exists only in the minutes before the day commits to itself. The limestone faces of the structures catch this light before anything else does. They almost seem to glow from within. Somewhere in the distance, a bird calls, a single, clear note that rises and then dissolves into the quiet. The city is waking up. There is something to understand about this place, about this time, that takes a moment to settle into the mind properly. The people who are waking up in these streets, who are stoking these fires and kneading this bread and pulling on their rough linen and stepping out into the cool of this very early morning. They are living in one of the most organized, most literate, most medically advanced societies on the surface of the earth. They have a calendar. They have mathematics refined enough to align a building to true north with an error of less than 1/10 of a degree. They have physicians who set broken bones, treat infections, and document their cases in scrolls of papyrus. They have a legal system. They have poetry. They also have ordinary problems. Sore backs, arguments with neighbors, children who will not sleep, bread that did not rise correctly, the familiar, quiet difficulty of being human. And somewhere at the center of all of this, the invisible gravity around which the entire world of this plateau orbits, there is a man. A pharaoh. A king. A living god, at least in the understanding of everyone who surrounds him. He, too, is waking up this morning. Though the manner of his waking is rather different from the man in the doorway across the street. But we will come to that in time. For now, stay here. Stay in this cool, pre-dawn street with the smell of bread and wood smoke and dry limestone dust. Listen to the dog that has started barking again somewhere to the east. Watch the sky above the plateau begin its slow shift from blue-black to gray, from gray to the first soft gold. The Nile, which is the reason any of this exists, is only a short walk to the east. It will be worth turning toward it soon, because to understand this world, to truly understand why the pyramids exist, why the bread is being baked, why the man in the doorway works where he works and lives where he lives, you need to understand the river first. Everything in this part of the world begins with water. Walk east. That is all you need to do. Walk east from the plateau, away from the limestone and the dust and the low mud brick buildings still exhaling their first smoke of the morning, and within a short while the ground begins to change beneath your feet. The pale, dry hardness of the desert softens. The air shifts. There is something in it now, a coolness that is different from the cold of the open plateau, something with a little weight to it, a little green, a little life. The sand gives way to darker earth, and the darker earth gives way to something darker still, a rich, deep, almost black soil that feels entirely different to walk on, as if the ground itself has decided to become generous. And then you hear it. Not loud. Nothing about this morning is loud. But steady, a slow, continuous movement of water, wide and unhurried, carrying with it a sound like breathing. Like something vast and patient simply continuing to exist. The Nile. It is broader than you might expect, if you have only ever seen it in photographs taken from the air or on maps where it appears as a thin blue line threading through the long yellow body of a continent. Standing at its bank, it is not a thin line. It is a presence. It is wide enough that the far bank, in this early light, is still a soft blur of reeds and low palms and dark earth, close enough to see, but far enough to feel like another world. The surface of the water is almost perfectly still in places, catching what little light exists in this pre-dawn hour and holding it in long, trembling reflections. A bird, a gray heron, motionless, stands at the edge of the shallows with the patience of something that has never once been in a hurry. Right now, in this particular season, the river is not at its most dramatic. That will come later. But the memory of drama is everywhere along these banks, in the dark stain on the reeds a little above the waterline, in the rich black of the soil beneath your feet, in the particular smell of this place, which is unlike any other smell on earth. Wet earth and green water, and something older than both, the smell of a river that has been doing this, year after year, for longer than human memory reaches. The Egyptians have a word for this soil. They call it Kemet, the Black Land. And they have named their entire civilization after it, Kemet, because they understand, with a clarity that cuts straight through to the practical truth of things, that the black soil is not just where they live. It is why they live. It is the reason there is bread, and beer, and linen, and children, and cities, and pyramids. Without it, there is only the other thing, the Deshret, the red land, the desert, which begins almost exactly where the black soil ends, sometimes within the space of a single step, as if the world has drawn a clean and ruthless line between survival and its absence. This border, this abrupt, remarkable edge between life and death, is something a person born here would never stop being aware of. You would grow up knowing it. You would see it from your rooftop every morning. The green strip of the valley, and then, almost immediately, the pale lifeless expanse stretching away to the horizon with nothing to offer and nothing to forgive. It makes the river feel less like a geographical feature and more like a decision, as if the earth itself chose, in this one narrow corridor, to be kind. And the river is kind. Extraordinarily, almost impossibly kind. Once a year, in the months the Egyptians call Ake, which falls roughly between what we would think of as July and November, the Nile floods. Not gently. Not tentatively. It rises with a slow, unstoppable certainty, spreading out across the fields on either bank, covering everything that was dry, turning the valley into something that resembles an inland sea. The water that comes is not clear. It is reddish-brown and heavy with sediment carried down from the mountains and plains far to the south, from places that the people of Giza have probably never seen and might not be able to name, but whose rains they depend on entirely. This water, when it finally recedes after several weeks, leaves something behind. A thin layer of silt. Dark, fine, extraordinarily fertile. Laid down across the fields like a gift left quietly at the door, not asked for, not paid for, simply given, year after year, with the reliability of sunrise. A farmer in the Nile Valley does not need to rotate his crops to preserve the soil's richness. He does not need to add animal dung or compost or ash. He does not need to let his fields rest. The river does all of that for him, once a year, without asking anything in return except a small amount of patience while the fields dry out enough to plant. The result is an agricultural surplus that, by the standards of the ancient world, is almost miraculous. Egypt grows more grain than it needs. It stores the excess in large mud brick granaries, thick-walled, cool, carefully managed, and this stored grain becomes the currency with which everything else is bought. Not with metal coins, not yet, because coins do not exist here, not for another 2,000 years. But with grain. With bread. With the tangible, measurable, distributable reality of calories. It is grain that feeds the workers on the plateau. Grain that supports the scribes who keep the records. Grain that fills the tombs of the wealthy as offerings for the afterlife. Grain that makes it possible, in the most literal and practical sense, for tens of thousands of people to spend their working lives doing something other than growing food, building, weaving, carving, administering, calculating, doctoring, praying, governing. The pyramids are, among many other things, a product of agricultural surplus. They exist because the Nile floods. There are fishermen already on the water this morning. You can see them, two small boats, moving slowly, the oars dipping without hurry, the figures inside them dark shapes against the brightening surface of the river. Fishing here is not a hobby. It is a profession, a trade, a daily contribution to the enormous supply chain that keeps this corner of the ancient world running. The fish will be cleaned and salted and dried, and some of them will end up on the tables, or, more accurately, the reed mats, of the workers' village before the week is out. Nothing is wasted. Very little is overlooked. A woman appears on the bank not far from where you are standing. She is carrying a clay jar, wide-mouthed and heavy, and she sets it down at the water's edge with the ease of someone who has done this 10,000 times. She fills it, lifts it, balances it against her hip, and begins walking back toward the settlement with the particular steady, unhurried stride of someone carrying weight over a long distance. She does not look at the pyramids. Why would she? They have been there, or rather, they have been growing there, slowly, block by block, for as long as she can remember. They are simply part of the landscape of her life, the way a mountain is part of the landscape for someone who has grown up beside one. Extraordinary to visitors. Ordinary to her. The sky is changing now in a way that is difficult to describe without sounding excessive about it, but which is nevertheless true. It is genuinely, simply beautiful. The eastern horizon has shifted from that early gray gold into something warmer, something with more orange in it, and the clouds that were invisible an hour ago are now visible and are the color of embers. The palms along the bank are beginning to separate themselves from the dark mass they formed against the night sky and become individual things, each front distinct, moving very slightly in the first breath of morning air. And somewhere in all of this color, somewhere at the exact point where the sun is about to commit to rising, there is a moment, brief, maybe 5 seconds, maybe less, when the top of the Great Pyramid catches the light before anything else does. It is not yet clad in its final white limestone casing, not entirely, not in this particular year. That polished outer skin, the one that will one day make the structure gleam like a second sun, visible from the Mediterranean coast on a clear day, is still being fitted, still being smoothed into place by hands that spend their days making large things into precise things. But what is there already catches the light? The pale stone holds it. And for that brief moment, the pyramid looks less like something that was built and more like something that simply appeared, as if the earth pushed it up from below, or the sky lowered it from above, and human hands had nothing to do with it at all. Of course, human hands had everything to do with it. That is, in some ways, the most remarkable part of all of this. Not the alignment. Not the scale. Not the mathematical precision or the astronomical accuracy or the logistics of moving millions of tons of stone across a landscape without wheels or iron or any of the machinery that the modern mind reaches for instinctively when trying to understand how large things get built. All of those things are remarkable, yes. But the most remarkable thing might simply be this, that people decided to do it. That somewhere in the long human story, in this particular valley, in this particular millennium, a civilization accumulated enough surplus, enough organization, enough shared belief, enough collective will, to point at the sky and say, "We will build something that reaches toward it." And then they did. The woman with the clay jar is already back at the settlement. The fishermen have moved further downstream, their boats now small enough to be simply suggestions of boats against the brightening water. Along the bank, a few more figures are beginning to appear, walking, carrying, doing the early work of the day with the unhurried, purposeful movement of people who know exactly what needs to be done and are simply getting on with it. There is a version of Egypt that lives in the popular imagination, vast and gilded and strange, full of gods with animal heads and ceremonies conducted in torchlight and the heavy drama of death and divine power. That Egypt is not entirely wrong. It is simply incomplete. Because before the ceremony, before the divine, before the gold and the granite and the obsidian, there is this. A woman carrying water. Two men in a boat. The smell of mud and green reeds and the very first bread of the morning drifting out from a low building near the edge of the village. History is always made of both things. The enormous and the ordinary. The eternal and the everyday. And in Giza, in this hour, they are so close together that you could reach out and touch them both at once. The sun is nearly up now. Back on the plateau, the workers are beginning to gather. There is food to collect, tools to retrieve, the day's assignments to receive from the overseers who stand with their papyrus rolls and their careful records and their slightly harassed expressions. The bread is ready. The beer, which is thick and nutritious and only mildly alcoholic, more like a liquid bread than what the modern world would recognize as a drink, is being measured into vessels for the morning distribution. There is a world up there, on that plateau, that is worth spending some time inside. A world of ropes and stone and organized human effort and small personal details that have survived, against every expectation, across 45 centuries. The names of gangs painted in hidden tunnels. The record of a broken leg carefully set and healed. The graffiti of someone who wanted, in the simplest possible way, to be remembered. Come. The day is beginning. Let us go and see what it looks like from the inside. The bread comes out of the oven in rows. Not one at a time, not in small batches the way a single household might manage, but in long, organized rows, clay pot after clay pot lifted from the heat with thick rags wrapped around steady hands, set down on the low stone shelf that runs along the inner wall of the bakery, and left to cool just long enough that they do not burn the fingers of whoever picks them up next. The loaves are dark on the outside, dense on the inside, with a crust that makes a particular sound when tapped, a short, dry knock, like a knuckle on a wooden door, that means they are done. They smell of something deep and slightly sour, the smell of grain that has been coaxed into something more than grain by time and warmth and the particular culture of wild yeast that lives in this kitchen and nowhere else on earth. By the time the sun has fully cleared the eastern horizon, the bakery has been running for several hours already. This is not an accident. The people who manage this operation, and it is an operation organized with a precision that would not embarrass a modern catering company, understand that feeding a workforce of thousands begins long before those thousands are hungry. The ovens must be lit before the sky lightens. The dough, which was mixed and left to prove through the cooler hours of the night, must be shaped and loaded before the morning air grows too warm. Timing, in a place like this, is not a preference. It is a form of engineering. Step outside the bakery and into the street that runs alongside it, and you find yourself in the part of the workers' settlement that the archaeologists who will one day study this place call the galleries, a series of long, rectangular buildings arranged in parallel rows, each one divided internally into sleeping and working spaces, each one home to a rotating population of workers who pass through Giza in shifts, spend their weeks here, and return home to their families and villages before coming back to do it again. The buildings are not luxurious. They are not meant to be. But they are solid. The walls are thick mud brick, cooler in the heat of the day than anything a thinner wall could manage, and the floors are packed earth, swept regularly enough that they are almost smooth. In some rooms, there are low platforms of mud brick along the walls that serve as benches during the day and sleeping surfaces at night, covered with reed mats and whatever personal items a man has carried with him from home. A folded piece of linen. A small clay figurine of a household god, placed carefully in the corner nearest the door. A wooden comb. A leather sandal in need of repair. The small, specific evidence of a human life temporarily relocated. Most of the men sleeping in these galleries did not choose this work in the way a modern person might choose a job, browsing possibilities, weighing options, calculating salaries. The system that brought them here is more layered than that, more woven into the fabric of how Egyptian society understands itself and its obligations. During the flood season, when the fields are underwater and agricultural work is impossible, the state calls upon the villages of the Nile Valley to contribute labor. Not as punishment. Not as slavery. As a form of participation, a contribution to the great project that is, in the understanding of this world, not merely a construction job but a sacred act. Building the eternal home of a living God. Ensuring the continuity of the cosmos. Keeping the sun moving across the sky. This sounds grandiose. And perhaps it is. But it also results in a workforce that is, by the standards of the ancient world, remarkably well cared for. There is a man sitting near the entrance to one of the gallery buildings, doing something with a length of rope, checking it, coiling it, checking it again in that particular way that people handle tools they depend on, with a quiet attention that is almost affectionate. He is not young. His shoulders carry the particular slope of years of heavy work, and his hands are the hands of someone who has spent a long time making them useful rather than comfortable, wide across the palm, thick at the knuckle, with calluses in specific places that tell a story about which tools he uses most. He has probably been coming to Giza for several seasons now. He probably knows this plateau the way you know a neighborhood you have lived in for years, not as a marvel, but as a place with its own rhythms and personalities and inconveniences. He looks up as the bread distributors come through. This is a daily ritual, one of several that structure the working day with the reliability of a clock, in a world that does not have clocks in any form the modern mind would recognize. The distribution of rations is not casual. It is recorded. Somewhere nearby, a scribe with a sharpened reed and a pot of dark ink is making marks on a piece of limestone or a strip of papyrus, noting quantities and recipients and dates with the patient thoroughness of a bureaucracy that has been refining its record-keeping for hundreds of years. The Egyptians are extraordinarily good at writing things down. They are, in some ways, addicted to it. And this means that thousands of years from now, when the buildings are dust and the people are long gone, the records will survive, and the daily bread ration of a pyramid worker in 2560 BCE will be known. 8 to 10 loaves of bread per day. 4 to 5 liters of beer. And beyond the bread and beer, which form the nutritional foundation of nearly everyone's diet in this world, there is more. Fish, which comes up from the river regularly, dried and salted and distributed in quantities that suggest it is not a luxury but a standard component of the diet. Onions, which grow abundantly in the black soil of the valley and are eaten raw, cooked, dried, eaten at every meal by nearly every class of person, from the lowest laborer to the highest official. Lentils, chickpeas, leeks. And on certain days, at certain intervals, something more: beef, goat, duck. The bones found in the excavated remains of the workers' settlement have been studied carefully, and what they reveal is striking. These workers ate meat with a regularity that was unusual for ordinary Egyptians of this period. The state, it seems, understood that the people building its greatest monument needed to be properly fed. The beer deserves a particular note, because it is easy to hear the word and imagine something like what a modern person would picture: a cold drink in a glass, a social indulgence, something consumed for pleasure in the evening. That is not quite what this is. The beer of ancient Egypt is thick and cloudy, barely filtered, made from partially baked bread dissolved in water and left to ferment. It is less a beverage and more a food, dense with calories, rich in carbohydrates and B vitamins, and low enough in alcohol that drinking several liters of it over the course of a working day does not produce intoxication so much as sustained energy. It is safe to drink in a way that the water from the canal is not always guaranteed to be. It is nutritious in a way that plain water cannot be. For a man spending his day moving stone and rope and timber under an Egyptian sun, it is, in practical terms, almost ideal. He finishes checking his rope and sets it across his knees. Around him, the settlement is fully awake now. The streets between the gallery buildings carry the particular busy quality of a place with work to do, not frantic, not rushed, but purposeful, with the hum of many people performing many small tasks simultaneously. A group of younger workers moves past carrying wooden sledges that will be used later for transporting stone across the plateau. 2 women, wives or relatives of workers who live in an adjacent residential area, are talking near a doorway, one of them with a child sitting against her leg, playing with a small clay ball in the distracted, serious way that children everywhere play. An overseer walks through with the expression of a man who has too much to organize and too little time to organize it, though the pace at which he is walking suggests that even he is not in the kind of urgent hurry that would disrupt the morning's settled atmosphere. There is a building a little further along the street that is worth pausing at. It does not look remarkable from the outside. Same mud brick as everything else, same flat roof, same narrow doorway. But what happens inside it is something that puts this settlement in a different category from many of what the modern imagination might assume ancient construction sites to be. This is, in the simplest terms, a place of medicine. The people who work here, and the records and physical remains left behind will eventually confirm that they did work here, and that they were skilled, are physicians. Not in the mystical sense that is sometimes attached to ancient healing traditions, all incantation and ritual and plant magic, though those things exist in Egyptian medicine too and are not always ineffective. But in a practical, observational, empirical sense that is genuinely impressive for its time and place. The Edwin Smith Papyrus, which will not be written in its surviving form for another several centuries, but which draws on medical knowledge that is clearly much older, describes surgical procedures, wound treatments, and diagnostic approaches with a clinical precision that is startling to read. Injuries are categorized. Outcomes are assessed. Some cases are marked as treatable, others as difficult. A few, with an honesty that feels almost modern, are recorded as an ailment not to be treated. The physicians know what they can fix and what they cannot, and they are clear-eyed enough to say so. In the physical remains of this settlement, the bones tell a similar story. There are fractures here, broken arms, broken legs, the kind of injuries that are entirely predictable consequences of moving enormous quantities of stone that have been set and have healed. Not just healed, but healed well, in alignment, with evidence of deliberate intervention. There is at least one recorded case of amputation, a foot, or part of one, with evidence that the patient survived the procedure by years. The surgery was not just attempted. It succeeded. The men whose foot was removed continued to live in this settlement, continued to be part of this community, for long enough that new bone grew and the wound healed completely into scar tissue. Someone cared for him through that. Someone kept him alive. By mid-morning, the plateau above is already loud with the sounds of the day's main work, though loud is relative, and the sounds that drift down into the settlement are more felt than heard at this distance. The low, rhythmic percussion of copper chisels on limestone. The creak of wooden sledge runners on wet sand. The particular sound of a large group of people working together in coordinated effort, not the sound of individual voices or individual actions, but the sound of organized human force applied to an immovable problem, over and over, with patience. Outside one of the gallery buildings, a group of men are resting in the narrow strip of shade that the wall casts in the mid-morning sun. The shade is not wide, barely enough to sit in properly, but they have arranged themselves along it with the expertise of people who know exactly how to extract the maximum relief from a minimal amount of shadow. They are not talking much. The work is physically demanding enough that rest is not a social occasion so much as a biological necessity, a moment for the body to catch up with what has been asked of it, to eat a piece of bread, to drink from a clay vessel, to close the eyes for a few minutes without quite falling asleep. One of them has his back against the wall and his face tilted very slightly upward, eyes closed, not sleeping but not entirely present either. He is somewhere in the quiet middle distance of genuine physical exhaustion, that particular state where the mind empties not because one has asked it to, but because the body has simply run out of energy to keep it busy. There is something almost peaceful about it. The sun is warm on his face. The sounds of the settlement continue around him at a comfortable distance. He has eaten. He is not cold. Somewhere far above him, the thing he is helping to build continues to grow, stone by stone, toward a sky he is not, at this particular moment, looking at. His team has a name. The Egyptians who come here do not simply arrive as an anonymous mass of labor. They are organized into gangs, each with an identity, a name, a kind of institutional personality that makes the enormous project feel, at the level of the individual worker, manageable and even personal. Some of these names have a quality that suggests they were chosen with a certain spirit, a mild irreverence perhaps, or simply the human tendency to attach personality to any group one belongs to for long enough. Friends of Khufu. Drunkards of Menkaure. The names will survive, painted in red ochre on the ceilings of passages inside the very structures these men are building, places no one is meant to see, functional spaces within the construction itself, marked casually as one might mark a tool or a storage crate. A signature left not for posterity but for the simple satisfaction of having left it. They were here. These specific people, with this specific name, in this specific place. 45 centuries later, someone will read it by torchlight in a narrow tunnel and understand, in a way that crosses every distance of time and language, exactly what it meant. The man with his face to the sun opens his eyes. He looks at the bread in his hand, takes another bite, looks up at the section of blue sky visible above the rooftop across the street, and looks back down again. He says something to the men sitting next to him, too quiet to hear, just a few words, and the other man makes a sound that might be agreement or amusement or simply acknowledgement. Then the rest is over. They get up. They pick up their tools. And they go back to work. The stone arrives before the heat does. That is the intention, at least, to have the heaviest work done in the early hours, before the sun climbs past the point where the air itself seems to thicken and the limestone of the plateau radiates warmth upward from below as well as downward from above, so that a man standing on it feels caught between two fires. The overseers know this. The workers know this. Everyone who has spent more than one season at Giza knows that the morning hours are the hours when the body can still be asked to do extraordinary things, and that the afternoon hours are for tasks that require less of it. So the movement of stone, the central, defining, relentless work of this place, begins early, and it begins with a particular sound. The sound of water. Not the water of the Nile, though the Nile is never far from anything that happens here. This is water carried in clay jars and wooden vessels and poured, carefully, in a thin and continuous stream, just ahead of the wooden sledge that is about to move. The sand in front of the runners, and there are runners, long wooden beams along which the sledges slide, worn smooth by repetition and coated now with this thin layer of wet sand. The sand takes on a different quality when it is damp. It compresses. It becomes, briefly, almost frictionless. The sledge that would drag and stall and require every available body to budge it on dry ground will, on this wet surface, move with something closer to grace. This is not magic. It is not accident. It is observation refined into technique over generations of moving heavy things across dry ground, the practical knowledge of people who have been solving this particular problem for long enough to have found the best available answer to it. Centuries from now, a wall painting in an Egyptian tomb will show this exact process: a man at the front of a sledge pouring water from a vessel just ahead of the runners while dozens of workers pull on ropes behind him, and archaeologists who find it will at first wonder if it is symbolic, ceremonial, a detail without practical significance. Then they will test it. They will build a model sledge and load it with weight and try it on dry sand and wet sand, and the numbers will come back clear. Wet sand reduces the pulling force required by roughly 50%. Half. The effort required is cut in half by a jar of water poured at the right moment in the right place. The men on the ropes this morning number somewhere between 20 and 50, depending on the weight of the block they are moving and the distance it needs to travel. They are arranged in rows along the length of the rope, which is thick, hand-twisted from plant fiber, and under enough tension that it hums very faintly, a low, almost musical note that changes pitch when the load shifts. They lean into their work with the whole body rather than just the arms, feet braced, spine angled forward, weight thrown against the resistance of the rope as if trying to push through it. A foreman at the side calls the rhythm. Not words, exactly, but sounds, a short, percussive grunt that the workers echo as they pull, a way of coordinating the effort so that 40 bodies apply their force at the same moment rather than in a ragged sequence that would waste half of it. The block moves. Slowly. Almost imperceptibly at first, just a tremor, a settling, a suggestion of motion that might be wishful thinking if it were not followed, a moment later, by the unmistakable sound of runners sliding across wet sand with a long, low hiss. And then it is moving. Not fast. Nothing about this is fast. But it is moving, and the men on the ropes feel the change immediately. The rope goes from something rigid and resistant to something alive, something that has given in to them, and the collective exhale of relief and effort is audible even over the sounds of the plateau. They will do this many times today. Each block of limestone in the body of this pyramid weighs, on average, somewhere between 2.5 and 3 tons. The largest, which form the foundations and certain interior chambers, weigh considerably more, 15 tons, 20, in some cases more than that. There are approximately 2.5 million of them in the finished structure, though finished is a word that still lies some years in the future from this particular morning. At the peak of construction, the most optimistic estimates suggest that somewhere between 300 and 400 blocks were being placed every single day. Which means the organization required to quarry them, transport them, sort them, move them across the plateau, lift them, align them, and set them in place is not the organization of a building site but the organization of a small country, all of its systems pointed at a single sustained purpose. The quarry for most of the limestone is not far. There is an enormous excavation on the plateau itself, just to the south of the pyramid, where the local limestone has been cut away in great steps and blocks, leaving behind a negative space that is, in its own way, as impressive as the structure it produced. The harder granite, used for certain internal chambers and the casing stones that will eventually line the burial chamber, comes from much further south, from Aswan, which is 800 kilometers away, which means that those particular stones have traveled down the Nile on boats, have been unloaded at a canal specially cut to bring them as close to the plateau as possible, and have then made the final journey on sledges across the sand. 800 kilometers. on boats, on sledges, by hand. There is a tendency, when looking at the pyramids from the modern world, to reach for explanations that match the scale of what was accomplished, to suggest that something other than human effort must have been involved, because human effort alone seems insufficient. But this reaction, understandable as it is, comes from comparing what the ancient Egyptians had with what we have now: cranes and diesel engines and steel cable and computer-modeled load calculations, and concluding that without those things, the result is impossible. What it does not account for is time and patience, and the particular kind of collective intelligence that develops in a society that has been solving the same category of problems, with the same basic set of tools, for hundreds of years. The Egyptians did not build the Great Pyramid in a sudden burst of inspired improvisation. They built it on the accumulated knowledge of smaller pyramids built before it, each one teaching lessons about what worked and what did not, what held and what collapsed, what could be aligned correctly and what drifted out of true. By the time Khufu's pyramid was begun, the builders who designed it were not beginners. They were the inheritors of a tradition that had been developing and refining itself for generations. The precision of the result reflects that. The base of the pyramid covers approximately 5.5 hectares, an area large enough to fit several large city blocks, and its 4 sides are aligned to the cardinal directions with an accuracy that is, even by modern surveying standards, remarkable. The error from true north is less than 1/10 of a degree. The 4 base sides differ from each other in length by less than 8 centimeters across a total span of roughly 230 meters. The corners are almost perfect right angles. This was achieved without GPS, without laser levels, without theodolites or any of the optical instruments that modern engineers depend on, using stretched cords and plumb bobs and a sophisticated understanding of stellar observation that is itself evidence of a long tradition of patient, careful watching of the sky. A man with a cord and a plumb bob and a knowledge of where certain stars rise and set can, with enough care and repetition and time, produce results that look, from the outside, like something that required instruments that did not yet exist. By mid-morning, the sun has become serious. There is no other word for it. The light at this hour is not the soft, amber, forgiving light of early morning. It is direct and flat and very bright, and it turns the limestone of the plateau into something that reflects rather than absorbs, so that the light seems to come from the ground as well as the sky, and squinting becomes involuntary and continuous. The workers who have been pulling sledges and chiseling stone and carrying supplies since before sunrise have now entered the part of the day when the body sends clear signals about what it needs, and what it needs is shade. The midday rest is not a luxury. It is a structural feature of the working day. The men who have been on the ropes find a wall, find the shadow it throws, and lower themselves into it with the particular grateful elegance of people whose legs have decided the question independently of their minds. Bread comes out of cloth wrappings. Water and beer are passed in clay vessels from one person to the next with the casual generosity of people who are used to sharing small things. The conversation, if there is conversation, is low and occasional, not the energetic talk of people who have energy to spare, but the few words exchanged between people who know each other well enough that silence is not uncomfortable. Some of them sleep. Not deeply, not the sleep of a full night in a cool room, but the particular light unconsciousness of someone who has closed their eyes in a patch of shade and let the body take 10 or 15 minutes to do what it needs to do. The sound of the plateau continues around them, the distant knocking of copper chisels, the occasional creak of a sledge, the voice of an overseer somewhere to the left calling something that is too far away to make out. It flows past the sleeping men like water around stones. They do not stir. Above them, the pyramid continues upward. It is not finished at the top. The apex, the pyramidion, that final capstone which will be set last of all, which may or may not be covered in gold or polished granite, the question of what it looked like still not settled entirely even by the time of the future researchers who will study all of this, the apex is not there yet. What is there is a stepped, flat-topped structure that is perhaps 2/3 or 3/4 of its final height, and which already, even incomplete, is the tallest thing any living human being has ever seen built by human hands. A young worker sits a little apart from the others, not sleeping, eating his bread slowly and looking up at it. He has been here 2 seasons. He is old enough to understand what he is part of, and perhaps young enough to still feel the full weight of that understanding, the slight, pleasurable vertigo of knowing that one is involved in something that will outlast everything else one will ever do, will outlast one's children and one's children's children, will stand in this desert long after every memory of this specific midday rest in this specific patch of shade has dissolved entirely. He finishes his bread. He looks at the pyramid for another moment. Then he lies back, closes his eyes, and lets the shade and the warmth and the distant sounds of the plateau do what they will with the remaining minutes before the foreman's voice calls the afternoon back into existence. The work is not finished. The work is never finished, not yet. But the afternoon will come, and with it more rope, more stone, more of the slow and patient accumulation that is, in the end, the only way that anything this large ever gets built. One block at a time. One day at a time. And the days, here at Giza, are long. Step away from the plateau. Not far, just down the gentle slope that leads from the construction site toward the residential area where the families live, the permanent households rather than the rotating gallery buildings of the workers' quarters. A different quality of life exists here, though different does not mean better or worse. It means quieter, more settled, more layered with the particular accumulation of objects and habits and small decisions that builds up in a place where the same people sleep every night, season after season, year after year. The street that runs through this part of the settlement is narrow enough that 2 people carrying bundles can only just pass each other without turning sideways, and the walls on either side are whitewashed mud brick, bright in the full morning sun, casting almost no shadow at this hour because the sun is too high and the walls too low. There are doorways every few meters, most of them covered with a length of woven reed matting or a piece of heavy linen that moves slightly in whatever breath of air finds its way into the street. From behind one of these coverings, a smell drifts out that is immediately familiar and immediately comforting in the way that cooking smells always are, in every time and every place, something warm and savory, something with onions in it, something that suggests the inside of the house is a different world from the outside. Push the linen aside gently. Step in. The first thing is the light, or rather the quality of it, how different it is from the flat brightness of the street. Inside, the light is indirect and soft, arriving through the doorway and through one small, high window set in the wall opposite, and it falls across the interior in a way that makes everything look slightly warm, slightly amber, slightly like the inside of something rather than the outside of something. The walls are plastered and whitewashed here too, and in some places they have been decorated, simple patterns in red and yellow ochre along the lower portion, the kind of geometric decoration that anyone with a steady hand and a few pots of colored earth can apply, and which transforms a functional mud brick box into something that is, unmistakably, a home. The floor is packed earth, swept clean and spread in places with woven reed matting, a texture underfoot that is slightly springy, slightly warm, and smells faintly of dry grass and the particular earthy sweetness of reeds that have been cut and woven and lived on. Along one wall, a low platform of mud brick serves multiple purposes depending on the time of day: a place to sit in the afternoon, a surface for setting things on, and at night, with a mat unrolled on top of it and a wooden headrest placed at the appropriate end, a bed. The headrest deserves a moment of attention because it is one of those objects that seems, at first, to represent a form of discomfort so obvious that the only explanation must be that the ancient Egyptians experienced their bodies differently from the way we experience ours. It is a curved piece of wood, sometimes alabaster, sometimes ivory in wealthier households, shaped to support the neck rather than the head, lifting the skull off the sleeping surface and keeping the head in a position that, to a modern person accustomed to soft pillows and mattresses that yield to the weight of the body, sounds deeply uncomfortable. And perhaps it was. But it also kept the head away from the insects and small creatures that might otherwise investigate a face resting directly on a mat, and it preserved elaborate hairstyles and wigs that took considerable time and skill to arrange and were not easily redone in the morning. Practicality wears many different shapes in different times and places. The woman of the house is near the back wall, crouched over a low grinding stone, working grain into flour with a flat-bottomed hand stone that she pushes forward and pulls back with a steady, unhurried rhythm. It is not fast work. It is the kind of work that occupies the body completely while leaving the mind partially free, and she has the expression of someone whose thoughts are somewhere other than on the grain, not distracted, exactly, just present in the way that people are present when they are doing something familiar enough that it does not require their full attention. There is flour on her forearms. There is flour on the edge of the grinding stone, and a little on the mat beneath it, fine as dust and pale as moonlight. She grinds grain every morning. This is not unusual. This is not a sign of poverty or hardship. It is simply the reality of how bread is made, in a world where the flour cannot be bought pre-ground and bagged from a shelf, but must be produced, each day, in the kitchen of each household, by someone's hands. The stone she uses is worn in a slight depression in the middle from long use, her use, and before her, the use of whoever lived in this house before she did, and possibly the person before that. Objects accumulate history here in a way that is quiet and unhurried, the same way that riverbanks accumulate silt. There is a child somewhere in the back of the house. Not visible from here, but audible, a low, continuous sound somewhere between humming and talking, the particular self-directed murmur of a young child engaged in private play. If you followed the sound back through the low doorway in the inner wall, you would find a small room with almost nothing in it, a sleeping mat rolled to one side, a clay water jar in the corner, and in the middle of the floor, a child of perhaps 4 or 5 years old, sitting cross-legged and very serious, moving small clay figures around in a pattern that only they understand. One of the figures is a person. One might be an animal. A third is too worn to identify with certainty. They are not the elaborate, carefully painted toys that wealthier households might provide, those dolls with real hair woven into clay scalps, with wooden limbs strung on linen cords so they can be posed, which will be found one day in tombs where they were buried alongside their owners, small evidence of a life that included play and the things that were loved during play. But these rough clay figures serve the same essential purpose, which is to give a child a small world to arrange and rearrange according to their own logic, and in this they are perfectly adequate. Children in this world, it is worth noting, are not so different from children in any other world. They play. They resist sleep. They ask questions that the adults around them cannot always answer. They form attachments to specific objects, a particular piece of cloth, a clay animal, a smooth stone found near the river, with an intensity that adults have generally forgotten how to feel about things. They get sick and recover and get sick again. They grow, visible to everyone around them and invisible to themselves, in the way that growth always works. Egyptian children are given names that are sometimes poetic and sometimes simply hopeful. Names that mean things like beautiful horizon, or beloved of the god, or she who brings joy, or he who is healthy. Sometimes a name is a prayer, a wish made at the beginning of a life for what that life might hold. Sometimes it is a description of how the child appeared when they first arrived in the world. Sometimes it is simply the name of a relative, carried forward, a small thread of continuity running through generations. Back in the main room, the grinding has stopped. The woman has risen from the stone and is now doing something with a clay pot over a low fire built in a shallow depression in the floor near the doorway, close enough to the outside that the smoke can find its way out without filling the room, though some of it stays anyway, a thin blue haze near the ceiling that gives the upper part of the house a soft, slightly indistinct quality. The pot is small and round-bottomed, balanced on 3 stones over the coals, and what is inside it is beginning to make a sound, a slow, intermittent bubble, the sound of something coming to heat with patience. Lentils, most likely. Or a broth made with dried fish and onion and whatever green things the garden or the market provided this week. The specifics vary. The general shape of the meal does not, something grain-based, something legume-based, something flavored with whatever is available and in season, served in clay bowls on a reed mat on the floor, eaten with bread used as both utensil and accompaniment. The Egyptians are not ascetics. They enjoy food and drink and flavor. They have access to honey, which they use in cooking and in medicine and in certain ritual offerings. They grow garlic and coriander and cumin and use them without restraint. They eat watermelon. The evidence for this is clear, the seeds found in tombs alongside other provisions for the afterlife, which suggests that someone thought watermelon was worth bringing into eternity. They make date wine and pomegranate wine in addition to beer. The evening meal, when the whole household gathers, is the closest thing this world has to what a modern family might call quality time, not labeled as such, not scheduled or protected, simply the natural convergence of people who share a space at the end of a day's effort, eating together because eating is what one does and together is how one does most things. There are no tables. People sit on mats, on low stools, on the edge of the sleeping platform, wherever they find themselves. The food is passed. The children eat first, or eat alongside the adults, or eat separately in the back room depending on the household and the age of the children and the custom of the family. The house is small by any modern standard. The main room is perhaps 4 meters by 4, with a ceiling low enough that a tall adult must be slightly mindful of their head near the beams. The inner room where the child is playing is smaller. The rooftop, flat, accessible by a short ladder of wooden rungs, is perhaps the most important space of all, particularly in the warmer months, when sleeping inside becomes less comfortable than sleeping outside under the open sky with whatever night breeze the desert decides to offer. There are households in this part of the settlement where the family spends more of its nights on the roof than inside, where the cooking fire is moved up there in summer to keep the heat out of the living space, where life migrates upward with the heat and back downward with the cold, a seasonal pattern that is so established it requires no discussion. A cat appears in the doorway. It arrives with the particular composure of a cat that has decided to be somewhere and has no intention of explaining itself, pausing for a moment with one paw slightly raised, assessing the interior with eyes that are half closed in the bright light from outside, then stepping inside and moving across the floor with an unhurried diagonal that takes it past the grinding stone, past the fire, and toward the corner nearest the inner doorway, where it settles with the immediate finality of a cat that has found the correct location. Cats are present in Egyptian households with a frequency and comfort that makes it clear they are not merely tolerated but welcomed, not worshipped, not yet, not in the formal temple cult sense that will develop later, but genuinely, simply liked. Valued for catching mice and rats that would otherwise get into the grain storage. Appreciated for their company in the way that people in most times and places appreciate the company of animals that have chosen to live alongside them. Painted into household scenes on tomb walls not because they were sacred but because they were there, present in the actual daily life being depicted, sitting under chairs, eating fish from bowls, wearing small golden earrings in images that suggest someone found their cat charming enough to decorate. The woman looks at the cat. The cat looks at the woman. Some kind of assessment takes place between them, wordless and brief, and then the cat looks away first, which is how it always goes with cats. In the back room, the child's murmuring has taken on a slightly different quality, more narrative, less abstract, the sound of a story being told in private to an audience of clay figures. The words are not distinguishable from here, but the rhythm is familiar. The rhythm of a story being told is the same in every language, in every house, in every century, rising and falling, pausing, continuing, finding its way towards something that the teller has not yet decided. Outside, the street continues its morning business. Feet on packed earth. The distant sound of the plateau, a low and rhythmic percussion that is easy to forget when you are inside and easy to remember again the moment you step out. Someone passes the doorway carrying a basket of dried fish, heading toward the far end of the street where the trading happens. A pair of geese being driven somewhere by a young boy who is clearly losing the argument, the geese having their own strong opinions about which direction to go. There is a board game on the shelf near the wall. It is wooden, simple in construction, scratched with a grid of squares that form the playing surface, with small cone-shaped pieces arranged on it in a pattern that suggests a game in progress rather than a game waiting to be started. This is Senet, one of the oldest board games in the world, found in Egyptian tombs and settlements for thousands of years before this morning and for hundreds of years after it, popular enough to be included among the grave goods of people from nearly every level of society, from royal burials to the graves of ordinary workmen. The rules are not entirely certain, not even to the researchers who will eventually study it at length. But what is certain is that it was played widely, played regularly, played in households and probably in the shade outside of households, played by adults and children, played for leisure and perhaps for small stakes and perhaps simply for the pleasure of sitting across from another person and contesting something in a bounded and agreeable way. The game in progress on this shelf belongs to the evening. It was left mid-game last night. Someone got up, someone got tired, someone decided to continue tomorrow, and it is still there, the pieces in their positions, waiting with the patient quality of interrupted things. The child comes in from the back room, stands in the doorway for a moment, looking at the cat, looks at the mother, looks at the cat again, sits down on the mat near the fire and says something that the mother answers without looking up from the pot, the response automatic and warm and containing, probably, some version of a reassurance, or an instruction, or both, the kind of answer that parents have been giving to the kind of question children ask for as long as there have been both. The lentils are nearly ready. Outside, the sun moves. The shadows in the street shift by degrees that are too slow to watch but fast enough that by the time you notice them they have already moved. The plateau sounds continue their low, steady rhythm above and behind all of this, the percussion of a civilization at work, patient and enormous, and somehow, from inside this small bright room with its cat and its board game and its smell of cooking and the sound of a child beginning to hum again in the back room, not quite as overwhelming as it might seem from a distance. History, when you are inside it, is always smaller than it looks from the outside. More specific, more ordinary, more human. It is the grinding stone worn smooth by someone's hands. The clay figures arranged on a mat. The smell of onions in a small clay pot over a low fire, and a cat in the corner who is already, visibly, beginning to fall asleep. The afternoon will come. The street will grow quieter as the heat arrives. The child will be persuaded, eventually, toward a rest. And tonight, when the air cools and the stars appear above the flat roof and the sounds from the plateau have settled into the low hum of a sight at rest, the whole family will climb the wooden ladder and find their mats and lie down under the open sky, and the Nile will move in the darkness somewhere to the east, and the pyramid will stand on the plateau in whatever moonlight the night provides, and everyone in this small house will sleep. But that is later. For now, the pot is bubbling. The cat is dreaming. And somewhere on the shelf by the wall, the Senate pieces wait in the quiet positions of an unfinished game. There is a particular hour in the middle of the morning when the street that leads down toward the canal becomes something different from what it is at any other time of day. Earlier, it is a thoroughfare, people moving through it with purpose, carrying things, going somewhere, the street as a means rather than a destination. Later, when the sun has climbed to its full height and the air has thickened with heat, it will become nearly empty, the kind of stillness that settles over outdoor spaces when the temperature has made a compelling argument for being indoors. But in this hour, in the sweet middle stretch of the morning when the air is still bearable and everyone who has something to trade has brought it out and everyone who needs something has come to find it, in this hour, the street becomes a market. It does not look like a market in the sense that a modern person would immediately recognize. There is no fixed structure, no permanent stalls or shop fronts, no signs indicating prices or goods. What there is, instead, is a loose and organic gathering, people who have arrived with things spread on reed mats or carried in clay pots or hung from wooden frames propped against the nearest wall, and people who have arrived looking, moving slowly from one to the next, examining things with the careful, unhurried attention of someone who is making a calculation that involves more than one variable. The calculation does not involve money, because there is no money. This is one of those facts about ancient Egypt that requires a moment to settle into the mind properly, because the modern world is so thoroughly organized around currency, around the idea that everything has a price expressible in numbers, that trade is a matter of converting goods into a common medium and back again, that imagining commerce without it requires a small but genuine reorientation. In Egypt, for most of this period, what you have is what you bring to the exchange. And what you get is what the person across from you decides your things are worth in terms of their things, negotiated in the open air with whatever combination of knowledge, persuasion, relationship, and timing each party can bring to the conversation. A woman near the edge of the gathering has a basket of onions, good ones, fat and dry, the kind that store well and flavor everything. Across from her, a man with a length of linen folded over his arm is looking at the onions with an expression of mild interest that is probably understating his actual interest, the way people in negotiations tend to understate their interest. The linen is good quality, not the finest, not the kind that ends up in royal tombs or on the bodies of priests, but solid domestic cloth, evenly woven, with a whiteness suggesting it has been washed and dried in the sun more than once and come out well. How many onions for how much linen? The conversation that answers this question will be conducted in the language of comparison and precedent. What was exchanged for similar goods last week, what the fair rate is understood to be, what each party needs badly enough to concede a little ground. Everything here has a value that is understood in relation to everything else. Grain is the closest thing this economy has to a universal reference point, the standard against which other goods are informally measured, but grain itself is not always present in the exchange. What is present is the shared social knowledge of what things are worth, accumulated over generations of trading in this place and places like it, carried in the memory of every person who participates. Move through the gathering slowly. There is no hurry here, and hurrying would cause you to miss things. Near the canal, where the smell of water and reeds is strongest, a man is selling fish. Not fresh. Fresh fish does not survive long enough to be worth trading in this heat, and the smell of fish that is not quite fresh enough is one of the less pleasant qualities of a market near a river in a warm climate. These are dried fish, salted and stiff, stacked in rows with the flat, geometric precision of things that have been carefully prepared for storage and transport. Nile perch, mostly, large, firm-fleshed, the kind of fish that dries well and rehydrates in cooking into something still recognizably itself. There are smaller fish too, threaded on cords in long garlands, like a strange and silvery decoration. A woman picks one up, bends it slightly, examines the flesh near the backbone, and sets it back down without comment. The man selling says something. She makes a sound that is not quite agreement and not quite dismissal. The negotiation continues. Further along, copper tools, a small adze, a chisel, several needles, a razor blade, a set of small weights. The man who has these has the careful, slightly proprietary air of someone who knows that what he is selling is more valuable than most things at this gathering and intends for everyone around him to understand that without having to say it directly. Copper in this world is not cheap. It comes from the Sinai Peninsula, transported west in ingots and then worked by smiths who know how to shape it into things that hold an edge, temporarily, imperfectly, but well enough for the tasks this world asks of its tools. A copper chisel will dull before a stone one in some applications and outperform it in others. What it will not do is last forever. But nothing in this market is expected to last forever. Things are used, repaired, traded, used again. A boy of perhaps 10 passes through the market with a clay jar balanced on his head with the casual expertise of someone who has been doing this since he was small enough that the jar was nearly as large as he was. He is not shopping. He is going somewhere specific, the jar his errand and his purpose, and he moves through the gathering with the focused indifference of a person on a mission, not looking at the goods, not slowing for the conversations, threading between the adults with the particular ease of children in crowded places, who have a way of finding gaps that grown bodies cannot navigate. There is pottery everywhere. Clay is the material that holds this civilization together in a way that is easy to underestimate, not the grand painted vessels that end up in museums, but the ordinary, utilitarian, unglamorous pottery that holds everything a household needs to hold. Water, oil, beer, grain, rendered fat, dried herbs, the ashes of someone who was loved. Clay pots in this market come in sizes ranging from small enough to hold in one hand to large enough to require two people to move, and they sit stacked in careful towers or arranged in rows on mats, the inside of some of them still faintly stained with whatever they last contained. A crack in one is not necessarily a reason to reject it. Cracks can be repaired with bitumen or Nile silt, and a pot that has been repaired and still holds is still a useful pot. Step away from the main body of the market, follow the canal path eastward for a few minutes, and the sound of the gathering fades behind you into something like the memory of a sound, present but distant, a low hum of voices and movement that the mind registers without focusing on. The path here is quieter. The reeds along the canal edge are tall enough to cast a narrow stripe of shade across the ground, and in that stripe the temperature is noticeably different, just a few degrees, but enough to feel like relief. There is a small structure at the end of the path. It is not large. It does not need to be. This is not one of the great temples that the modern world associates with ancient Egypt, not Karnak, not Luxor, not the enormous sandstone monuments that will be built centuries and centuries from now in a time that has not yet arrived. This is a local place, a neighborhood shrine, the kind of sacred structure that exists not for the gods and their grand cosmic roles but for the gods and their domestic ones, the deities who concern themselves with the small, essential, daily matters of human life. The walls are whitewashed mud brick like everything else. The doorway is low enough to require a slight bow of the head to enter, which may or may not be intentional. There is something appropriate about entering a sacred space at a slight angle to the ordinary vertical of daily life. Inside, the air is different, cooler, and carrying a particular quality that is partly the smell of incense, kifi, perhaps, the complex resin compound burned in temples and shrines throughout Egypt, made from honey and raisins and myrrh and a careful combination of other ingredients whose recipe is considered a form of sacred knowledge, and partly something harder to name. The quality of enclosed air that has been regularly visited by people who came here with their attention directed in a particular direction. The accumulated atmosphere of intention. On a low shelf along the back wall, several small figures stand in a row. Ta, for the craftsmen who come here, the god of sculptors, architects, builders, all those who make things with their hands, shown always in his characteristic form, a mummified figure with his arms emerging straight through his wrappings, holding a scepter that combines several sacred symbols, his head enclosed in a tight cap, his skin the deep blue-green of new growth or distant water. He is the patron of this plateau in a very practical sense. The men who are cutting the stones above, who are laying them in their alignments, who are chiseling the fine details of the passages and chambers, they are his people. He is the reason they take a moment, before the day's work begins, to acknowledge that what they do is not merely physical labor but something that participates in a larger order. Beside Ta, a small figure of Bes, the dwarf god, lion-maned and fierce-faced and somehow simultaneously terrifying and deeply reassuring. Bes watches over households, over pregnant women and new mothers, over children in their first vulnerable years. He is depicted, always, in a posture of active protection, facing outward, arms ready, making a face that is apparently intended to frighten away whatever might threaten the people in his care. His image is found on the walls of birth chambers, on the handles of mirrors, on the headrests that people sleep on, because the night, in this world, is a time when protection is needed, and Bes works the night shift. A woman is already in the shrine when you enter. She is kneeling on the floor in front of the shelf, not in the prostrate, elaborate way of formal temple ceremony, but simply kneeling, the way a person kneels when they want to be at eye level with something, to speak to it quietly, directly, without the distance of standing. She has brought a small clay cup of beer and a handful of dried flowers, blue lotus, which grows along the Nile in the right season and is considered sacred enough for offerings and beautiful enough that people carry it simply because they want to. She sets these on the shelf beside the figures with a care that is unhurried and private. She does not look up when you enter. The moment is not for sharing. This is the texture of religion as it is actually lived in this world, not the grand ceremony, the processional, the sacrifice at the great temple that happens on feast days and draws the whole community into the street. That exists too, and it is important, and it happens with regularity throughout the Egyptian year, which is punctuated by religious festivals the way a modern year is punctuated by holidays. But what surrounds it, what underlies it, what fills in all the ordinary days between the feast days, is this: a woman with a cup of beer and some flowers, kneeling in a cool room before a small clay figure, saying whatever she came here to say. Prayer, in this form, is deeply personal and deeply practical. People ask the gods for specific things: health for a sick child, a good harvest from the garden plot, the safe delivery of a baby expected in the next month, the resolution of a dispute with a neighbor that has gone on long enough. They make promises in return. They offer what they have. The relationship is not abstract. It is not theological, in the sense of being primarily concerned with ideas about the nature of divine existence. It is relational, in the way that all relationships between people who need things from each other tend to be. the woman finishes. She rises with a slight adjustment of her linen dress, picks up the empty cloth that held her flowers, and turns toward the doorway. She does not look embarrassed to have been seen here, but she does not invite conversation either. Whatever she came to do, she has done it. The rest of the day is waiting. Outside the shrine, a man is sitting on the low wall that runs along the canal path, not going anywhere in particular, simply sitting, feet dangling over the edge, looking at the water below. He is older, with the particular stillness of someone who has long since stopped feeling that stillness needs to be justified. The water in the canal moves in the slow, purposeful way of water that is going somewhere specific, directed and contained by the work of people who understood, generations ago, exactly where it needed to go and why. It catches the light of the late morning sun in small, intermittent flashes, not quite sparkles, more like suggestions of light, there and then not there. He watches it the way people watch water, without particular focus, without needing it to be anything other than what it is. From down the path, the market sounds drift back, a voice raised slightly above the others for a moment, then settling again, then the low and continuous murmur of commerce and conversation that is, in its own way, as steady as the canal. From the plateau above, the percussion of the construction site continues its patient rhythm. From somewhere in the residential streets behind, a baby crying and then, after a moment, not crying. The ordinary sounds of a day in the middle of its own life. The man on the wall does not look at any of it. He looks at the water. The water moves. The sun continues its long, slow arc over everything below it, over the market and the shrine and the canal and the workers' galleries and the plateau with its enormous, patient, slowly growing structure, over the black soil along the river and the red desert beyond it and the Nile itself threading south toward its source in a landscape that nobody here has ever seen. All of it exists at once, in this hour, in this particular arrangement that will never be exactly repeated, because hours are like that, every one of them, in every time and place. They arrive. They fill with their specific content. They pass. And what is left behind is what the sand eventually covers, and what patient hands eventually uncover, and what sits in museum cases and archive rooms and published papers, fragments of what was once the whole ordinary breathing living fact of a day. A cup of beer left before a clay figure. A row of dried fish threaded on a cord. A boy moving through a crowd with a jar on his head. A man watching water. Small things. Common things. The kind of things that make a world. On the other side of the plateau, there is a different kind of waking. Not the waking of a man in a doorway watching the sky decide what kind of day it intends to be. Not the waking of a woman who rises before the light to begin the grinding, to tend the fire, to move the household from its night shape into its day shape with the quiet competence of someone whose work begins before anyone else notices it has begun. This waking is attended. It is structured. It happens inside walls of polished limestone and painted cedar and imported granite, in a series of rooms that exist for no purpose other than to contain the beginning of this particular day for this particular person, and it has been happening, with small variations, every morning for as long as this man has been what he is. And what he is, in the understanding of everyone who surrounds him, is not quite human. Or rather, he is human and also something more than human, a point of intersection between the mortal world and the divine one, a living vessel for the god Horus, falcon-headed and sharp-eyed, the divine force that holds the order of the cosmos together and prevents the chaos that would otherwise dissolve everything into nothing. This is not metaphor, not in the way a modern person might use the word metaphor. It is, for the people of this world, the literal structure of reality. The pharaoh's existence is not merely political. It is cosmological. When he performs the morning rituals that begin each day, he is not simply going through ceremonial motions, he is, in the most genuine sense that this world can produce, helping to keep the sun moving. His name is Khufu. Or rather, his name is many things, a birth name, a throne name, titles accumulated like layers of meaning, but the name by which the future will most readily find him is Khufu, which means something close to "he protects me," a reference to the god Khnum, who was believed to have fashioned this particular soul with particular care on his divine potter's wheel. He has been pharaoh long enough that the weight of it has settled into him, the way any carried weight eventually settles, not lighter, but more evenly distributed, so that the body forgets it is carrying anything at all until the moment it is set down. The room in which he sleeps, if sleep is the right word for whatever a living god does in the dark hours, is not what a modern imagination might expect from the word royal. It is not extravagant in the way that later royal bedrooms will be extravagant, hung with silks and crowded with ornament and designed to overwhelm the eye with accumulated wealth. It is large, certainly, and its proportions are precise in the way that everything built under the direction of the people who also built the pyramid above is precise. The walls are plastered smooth and painted with images that are both decorative and protective, figures of gods in their characteristic colors, hieroglyphic texts that serve as prayers fixed permanently into the fabric of the room, always present, always working even when no voice is speaking them aloud. The floor is cool underfoot. Limestone always is, in the early morning, regardless of how warm the day before has been. It holds the night's coolness the way a clay pot holds water, releasing it slowly into the first hours of the day. The light at this hour comes from oil lamps set in niches in the walls, small flames, steady in the still air of the interior, casting a warm and wavering yellow light that is sufficient for movement and proximity but not for reading. The lamps burn castor oil, or sesame oil, or the rendered fat of animals, each type producing a slightly different quality of flame, a slightly different smell, a slightly different color in the light it casts. The waking is not solitary. There are people in this room before Khufu opens his eyes, servants, attendants, the specific individuals whose role it is to be present at this moment and to begin the sequence of actions that will transform a sleeping man into a functioning god-king before the sun has fully established itself in the sky. They move quietly and with the practiced efficiency of people who have done this many times and understand that the morning has its own momentum, its own requirements, and that their function is to serve that momentum rather than impose upon it. Water comes first. It is carried in a vessel of alabaster, smooth, translucent, cool to the touch, and it is not the brown water of the canal or the red-tinged water of the flooded Nile but clean water, carefully sourced and carefully kept, the kind of water that is itself a form of luxury in a world where clean water requires either proximity to a good source or the resources to ensure that someone else maintains proximity on your behalf. The washing is thorough. The Egyptians are, as a people, more concerned with cleanliness than many of the civilizations that will come after them. They wash regularly, They shave the hair from their bodies with copper razors, they clean their teeth with small brushes of fibrous wood, and they regard bodily cleanliness not merely as a personal preference but as a form of spiritual hygiene, a preparation of the physical vessel for whatever sacred functions it is required to perform. Khufu is shaved this morning. His jaw, his head, the natural hair covered or removed, replaced by the structured formality of the wig, the headdress, the false beard that is worn on ceremonial occasions and that is, in this context, less a disguise than a costume in the older sense of that word, a visual grammar that communicates status and role to everyone who sees it, in a language so thoroughly established that no one needs to explain it. Then the linen. The finest linen in this world is so finely woven that it is nearly transparent. The ancient texts describe it as woven air, which sounds like poetry but is also, in practical terms, an accurate description of how it behaves in the hand. It is white. Very white, bleached in the sun and washed until any trace of the natural yellow-brown color of the flax has been removed, so that what remains is a whiteness that has a slightly luminous quality, as if it is not simply the absence of color but the presence of something specific. To be dressed in white linen of this quality is to be visibly, immediately distinguished from the people around you who wear rougher cloth in darker colors. The distinction is not subtle. It is designed to be seen. The oils come after, scented with substances that have been blended by people whose knowledge of aromatic chemistry is, in its own domain, as sophisticated as the knowledge of geometry is in the domain of architecture. Myrrh, frankincense, kifi, here in a lighter formulation than the incense burned in the shrines, designed to be worn rather than inhaled from a distance. These are not mere perfumes in the modern cosmetic sense, they are substances with symbolic weight, with ritual significance, with the accumulated meaning of generations of use in sacred contexts. To anoint the pharaoh is to participate in a process of making him ready for what his day requires of him. By the time he rises fully and moves into the outer rooms of the palace compound, Khufu is not the same man who opened his eyes in the dim lamplight an hour ago. Or rather, he is the same man, the same body, the same accumulated experience of years, the same private knowledge of what it actually feels like to be Khufu on any given morning, but he is also the public version of himself now, the ceremonial version, the version that the day requires and that the people around him are prepared to receive and respond to accordingly. The first duty of the morning is the god. In the innermost sanctuary of the temple complex attached to the palace, a room small enough to feel intimate and dark enough that the lamplight matters, there is a shrine. Inside the shrine, a statue. The statue is Horus, or Ammonius, or Ra, or whichever aspect of the divine is most specifically attended to in this particular space, rendered in wood or stone or gilded wood, somewhere between the size of a child and the size of a small adult, and treated with a care that goes considerably beyond what one might give to an object that was merely symbolic. Because this statue, in the understanding of the Egyptian priestly tradition, is not merely symbolic. The god can inhabit it. The god's spirit, his Ka, can be present in this carved and painted form if the correct procedures are followed to invite it, and the correct procedures are followed every single morning. Khufu approaches the shrine. The attendants who came this far with him stop at the threshold. This part is done alone, or nearly alone. There is a priest, perhaps, but even the priest stands back, because what happens at the shrine in these moments is between the pharaoh and the god, and the intimacy of that relationship is not diminished by the fact that it is also, simultaneously, a political and cosmological necessity. The shrine is opened. The statue is greeted. Offerings are placed before it: food, flowers, water, small amounts of the precious oils whose smell now mingles with the cool stone air of the sanctuary into something that is specific to this room and no other room in the world. The statue is dressed, in miniature, tiny garments of fine linen, tiny vessels of water for washing, tiny amounts of coal applied around the painted eyes by hands that are steady from long practice. The mouth of the statue is touched with a ritual implement, a ceremony called the opening of the mouth that is most familiar to the modern world in its funerary application, performed for the dead to restore their senses for the afterlife, but which in its original form is also a daily act of animation, an invitation for the divine breath to enter the carved stone and be present in the world of the living. This takes time. It is not rushed. There is something worth sitting with in this image, a man who controls the resources and labor of an entire civilization, who has set in motion the building of a structure that will be the largest on Earth for 4,000 years, who carries in his person the mythological weight of a divine falcon king, kneeling in a small stone room before a statue that fits in his arms, performing a careful and intimate domestic ritual that is essentially the sacred equivalent of waking someone up and helping them start their day. The scale shifts. It does that constantly here. The enormous and the miniature live beside each other in this world with a comfort that does not always translate easily into modern categories. After the sanctuary, the day opens outward. There are people to see. Not in the way of a modern executive moving through a calendar of appointments, though there is something in the structure of the Pharaoh's working day that is not entirely unlike that, a series of audiences, discussions, and decisions that keeps moving forward through the hours with the assistance of a significant supporting apparatus of officials, scribes, and advisors whose collective function is to ensure that the machinery of the state continues to turn. Egypt is large. Egypt is complex. Egypt produces enormous quantities of grain and stone and copper and linen and fish and cattle and all the other goods that make a civilization run, and it must be administered, constantly, by people who understand how administration works and who have the records, always the records, to tell them what is happening in every corner of the kingdom. The chief overseer of works is present this morning. He is a practical man, not given to excessive ceremony, who comes with papyrus rolls under his arm and the particular expression of someone about to discuss logistics. The pyramid is the subject, always the pyramid, at this phase of the reign, the construction that absorbs a considerable proportion of the state's attention and resources. There are reports of a supply delay. The granite from Aswan has been slower than planned this season, something to do with the water level in a particular stretch of the canal, which has affected the movement of the boats. Solutions are proposed and considered. Decisions are made, not the decisions of a man performing power for the benefit of an audience, but the decisions of a man who understands his project and knows what it needs and has the authority to direct resources accordingly. Records are updated. The scribe writing in the corner, a young man, probably, still building the muscle memory of hieratic script, that simplified cursive form used for administrative documents rather than the formal hieroglyphs carved into stone, keeps his head down and his reed moving. He will produce today a document that is, for him, routine work. A record of a meeting. Numbers. Names. Quantities. A date. This document will in all likelihood be filed, referenced once or twice, and then stored, and then, eventually, the papyrus will dry and yellow and crumble and be lost, because papyrus is not limestone, and most papyrus does not survive 4,500 years in the way that stone survives it. Most. But not all. Khufu himself is known to us, the modern us, the future us sitting here at this very great distance from the morning described above, almost entirely from fragments and records and the structure of the thing he built. His voice does not survive. His private thoughts do not survive. What he looked like is known, at present, from a single object, a small ivory figurine, less than 8 centimeters tall, found at Abydos in 1903, depicting a seated king. It is the only known three-dimensional portrait of the men who built the largest structure in the ancient world. 8 centimeters. There is something in that contrast, the pyramid and the figurine, the colossal and the tiny, the thing that will last and the thing that nearly did not, that feels, somehow, like the truest summary of what history is and how it works. The enormous things are not always what survive. The small things sometimes outlast them, in different ways, in different forms, carrying different kinds of information about what was real. Later in the morning, there is a meal. Not the bread and beer of the workers' village, something more varied, more carefully prepared, served in vessels of faience and alabaster by attendants whose role is specifically the service of this table. Roasted meat, spiced with cumin and coriander. Flatbreads still warm from the kitchen. Figs. Honey, served in a small alabaster dish with a wooden spoon. The wine is from the Delta, red wine, made from grapes grown in the vineyards of the northern marshes, stored in sealed clay amphorae whose necks are stamped with information about their origin and their vintage, because the Egyptians are, as has been established, people who write things down. He eats with the quiet efficiency of a man who has other things on his mind. Or perhaps he does not. Perhaps this particular morning, this particular meal, he is simply a man eating figs and thinking about nothing in particular, in the way that all people, even those carrying considerable weight, occasionally find a moment when the mind sets down its cargo and rests. Outside the palace walls, the city continues its work. The plateau sounds have changed slightly as the morning has progressed, the tempo of the chiseling, the intervals between the rhythmic work calls, the particular acoustic signature of this construction site at this hour, but they have not stopped. They do not stop. They are, for Khufu, the background noise of his own ambition made audible, the daily evidence that the project is continuing, that the stone is moving, that the thing he has chosen to build is being built. He finishes his meal. He sets down the wine cup. He looks, for a moment, at nothing in particular, at the painted wall across the room, or the ceiling above, or the middle distance that people look at when they are not really looking at anything. Then he turns back to the papyrus rolls waiting on the table beside him. Back to the lists and the numbers and the names of the people and the quantities of the things that make the world run. Back to the daily work of being what he is, which is, in most of its practical details, less like divinity and more like governance, less like floating above the world and more like sitting inside it, trying to understand what it needs. The morning is more than half gone. The sun outside is high and serious, and the shadows have pulled themselves in from their long morning extensions to something tighter and denser directly below each thing that casts them. In the workers' village, the midday rest is beginning. On the plateau, the pace has slowed. In the small shrine along the canal path, the incense from the morning's offering has burned down to a thin thread of smoke that is barely moving in the still air. And here, in these rooms of polished stone and painted cedar, a man who is also a god is reading a report about a canal. The day continues. The sun moves. The pyramid grows, one stone at a time, toward a height that will outlast everything: the canal report, the alabaster wine cup, the ivory figurine, the papyrus roll, the hands that wrote on it, the eyes that read it, the mind behind the eyes that understood what it said and decided what it meant. Almost everything will go. The stone will stay. And somewhere inside the stone, in a passage that will not be opened for another 4,500 years, painted in red ochre on a surface that was never meant to be seen, a name. Not his name. The name of a gang of workers who wanted, in the simplest and most human way possible, to be remembered. They were here too. On this same morning. Under the same sun. Doing the work. There is a sound that has been running underneath everything else this whole morning. Underneath the chisels on the plateau and the market voices along the canal and the quiet ritual words spoken in the sanctuary of the temple, underneath all of it, steady and rhythmic and so continuous that the ear eventually stops registering it as a separate sound and folds it into the general texture of the place, the way the sound of a river eventually folds into the silence of a landscape it runs through. It is a particular sound. A forward and back percussion, soft but persistent, like something being pulled through something else at regular intervals. Like breath given a physical form. It is the sound of a loom. Follow it down a side street that branches off the main residential path, narrower than the street you have been walking, shaded on one side by an overhang of dried palm fronds laid across wooden beams, cool in a way the open streets are not. The sound grows clearer as you walk. By the time you reach the low doorway from which it is coming, it has resolved itself into something precise and almost musical: the regular knock of the heddle rod, the soft hiss of the shuttle passing through the shed, the gentle thump of the weft being beaten down into the growing cloth. These sounds have a tempo. They have a logic. They are the sounds of a process that is completely understood by the hands performing it, hands that do not need to think about what they are doing because the thinking happened long ago and has since been absorbed entirely into the body. Step inside. There are 3 women in this room. One is older, somewhere past the middle of her life, with the particular economy of movement that comes from having done the same skilled work for many years, where nothing is wasted, where every gesture arrives exactly where it needs to and stops precisely when it should. She sits at the larger of the 2 looms, a horizontal ground loom stretched between 2 beams set low in the floor, her legs extended in front of her, her back straight, her hands moving with a completeness of attention that is not the tense attention of someone concentrating hard but the relaxed attention of someone doing something they know deeply. The cloth growing on her loom is fine, not the finest possible, but fine enough that the weave is close and even and the surface has a slight sheen where the light catches it. The other 2 are younger. One is perhaps 20, apprentice in the specific sense that she is here to learn from the older woman and is doing so primarily by watching and by being given the sections of the work that require less expertise, the preparation of the thread, the managing of the tension on the warp, the small corrections that keep the cloth growing evenly. The third, younger still, is doing something that seems peripheral but is not. She is spinning. A drop spindle in her hand, a mass of raw flax fiber in her lap, and with a practiced twist and drop motion she is drawing the fibers out and setting them, turning and watching them twist into thread with an attention that is partly technical and partly something closer to the pleasure of watching a material become what it is supposed to become. Linen is everything in this world. This is not an overstatement. Linen is clothing, yes, the tunics and kilts and dresses and wrapping cloths that the people of Egypt wear in every season, in every class, adjusted in weight and fineness and quantity according to the weather and the occasion and the resources of the wearer. But it is also bandages, sails, rope, the wicks of oil lamps, the shrouds in which the dead are wrapped for their journey into whatever comes next, the thread used to stitch wounds closed after surgery, the bags in which grain is stored and transported, the material in which documents are sometimes wrapped for preservation, the offering cloths placed before statues of the gods, the sail that moves the boat carrying granite from Aswan to Giza. Everything. And almost all of it, not just in this settlement but throughout Egypt, throughout this entire period of history, is produced by women's hands. This is worth pausing on, because it is one of those historical facts that tends to get simplified in both directions. On one side, there is the temptation to romanticize it, to describe it as a craft tradition, as women's art, in a way that makes it sound chosen and expressive. On the other side, there is the temptation to flatten it into a story of pure oppression, women confined to textile production, their labor invisible, their contribution unacknowledged. The truth, as it almost always is, sits somewhere in the complex middle. The work is real and skilled and demanding. It is also recorded. The women who produce linen in this settlement are not anonymous in the administrative sense. They appear in the same kind of records that document the bread rations and the stone deliveries, counted and measured and assigned quotas the way any productive worker is counted and measured and assigned quotas. Their work is understood to have value, because it does have value, in the most direct and practical sense. Egypt exports linen. Egypt uses linen as a unit of exchange in the barter economy. The cloth that these three women are producing today will become, among other things, a form of currency, traded for grain or copper or pottery or whatever the household or the institution they work for needs and does not currently have. The older woman says something without looking up from the loom. The younger one next to her answers, brief and matter-of-fact. The third does not look up from her spindle. It has the quality of conversation between people who know each other well enough that the words are almost secondary. The communication is in the tone, in the shared understanding of what is meant, in the comfortable efficiency of people who have been in the same room doing the same work for long enough that very little needs to be explained. Women in this world have a legal standing that is, by the standards of the ancient world broadly, unusual enough to be worth noting carefully. An Egyptian woman, not a queen, not a noblewoman, but an ordinary woman of ordinary means, can own property. Not as an extension of her husband's ownership, not in her husband's name, but in her own. She can inherit. She can sell. She can enter into contracts. She can bring a case before the local court and have it heard and decided on its merits. She can divorce, and when she does, she takes with her what she brought to the marriage, her property, her portion, her legal identity that was never subsumed into her husband's in the way that the laws of many later civilizations will require it to be. This does not mean that life as a woman in ancient Egypt is without constraint or difficulty or the particular weight of expectation that societies place on women regardless of their legal rights. It does not mean that power is distributed equally or that opportunity is available in the same way to every person regardless of their sex. But it means that the picture is more complicated than a simple before and after story of historical progress would suggest. Some things that the modern world considers progressive, this world already has. Some things the modern world takes for granted, this world lacks entirely. History is like that. It does not move in a single direction at a single speed across all of its dimensions simultaneously. Move now to a different room, a different sound. This room is a little removed from the residential streets, closer to the administrative area of the settlement, where the scribes work and the records are kept, and the daily accounting of this enormous operation is turned from lived reality into written form. It is not large. It has one window, high and small, casting a column of light that falls across the floor at a particular angle that will change as the morning progresses, but which at this hour catches the edge of the low table where the boy is sitting, illuminating his hands and the surface in front of him and leaving his face in a soft half-shadow. He is perhaps 12. Perhaps a little older. It is difficult to say, because people in this world do not always age in the ways that modern nutrition and modern medicine have made familiar, and a 12-year-old who has been doing physical and mental work since early childhood may carry themselves with more solidity than the word 12 now implies. He is a student. He is learning to be a scribe, which means he is learning something that the vast majority of people around him will never learn, and which will, if he completes his training, set him apart from the laboring world in a way that is irreversible and significant. He is learning to write. Not hieroglyphs, not the formal, pictorial script carved into temple walls and tomb chambers and the great monuments, which requires years of additional specialization and a level of artistic training beyond what most scribes ever reach. He is learning hieratic, the cursive, simplified script used for administrative documents, letters, accounts, medical texts, legal records, stories, and the 1,000 other written communications that keep a complex society intelligible to itself. It looks, to an eye unfamiliar with it, like a flowing, looping series of marks that bear a distant family resemblance to the more recognizable hieroglyphs without being immediately readable as the same language. Which is, in essence, what it is, the same language written quickly, written for function, written by a person who needs to get information from one place to another more efficiently than a wall inscription allows. In front of him is a potsherd. A flat, smooth fragment of limestone, an ostrakhan, in the terminology that future archaeologists will use, on which he is practicing. Papyrus is expensive. Papyrus is reserved for documents that matter, for final versions, for the official record. Students practice on pottery sherds and limestone flakes, of which there is no shortage on a construction site, and which can be cleaned and reused if the material is smoothed down again. The surface in front of him bears several lines of practice text, The same sequence of signs repeated with slight variations, the errors visible if you know what you are looking for, the corrections attempted in the line below. His teacher, somewhere nearby, has given him a text to copy. Possibly a classic, one of the wisdom texts that Egyptian schoolmasters favor both for their moral content and their grammatical usefulness, the Instruction of Tahotep perhaps, or one of the other composed texts that have been used to teach writing and thinking for generations. These texts do not merely teach writing. They teach a way of moving through the world. They carry within them ideas about how a person of good character conducts themselves, how they speak to those above them and those below them, how they manage their ambitions and their disappointments, how they grow old with something approaching grace. The boy writes. He pauses. He looks at what he has written with the evaluating squint of someone who knows what it should look like and is assessing the gap between that knowledge and the evidence in front of him. He makes a small sound, something between dissatisfaction and acceptance, and continues. Literacy, in this world, is power. Not in the abstract, metaphorical sense in which the modern world sometimes uses that phrase, but in the concrete, direct, practical sense. A man who can read and write can access and produce the records that determine how resources are allocated, how disputes are resolved, how debts are recorded, how instructions are transmitted across distances and over time. He can participate in the administrative machinery of a state that runs on documentation. He can, if he is good enough at his work and fortunate enough in his opportunities, rise considerably beyond the station into which he was born, because in Egypt, the scribal class is one of the few genuinely permeable boundaries in what is otherwise a fairly stratified social order. The father of the boy sitting here may have been a craftsman. His son may one day sit in the room where administrative decisions are made. The instrument of that crossing is the reed pen in his hand and the marks it makes on limestone. Now follow a different thread through this world, a quieter one that moves through the spaces between the more visible stories. There are people in this settlement who occupy a category that is difficult to translate cleanly into modern terminology without either minimizing their situation or overstating it. They are not free in the way that the worker who goes home to his village after his rotation is free. They are not enslaved in the way that the word slave carries in the modern imagination, that total, absolute, generational dispossession of self that the history of more recent centuries has made the defining reference for the concept. They are something between, and the between is important. Egypt has slaves. This is historical fact and it is worth being straightforward about. They come primarily from military campaigns, people captured in the conflicts that Egypt conducts periodically at its borders, incorporated into the Egyptian world as a consequence of those conflicts. Some are household servants. Some work in the fields or on construction projects. Some, over time, are freed. Manumission is not common, but it is not unheard of, and freed slaves in Egypt can and do integrate into the broader population, can and do marry Egyptians, can and do appear in legal records as individuals with rights and names and recognizable social identities. There is a woman in the household of one of the senior overseers, a household somewhat larger and better appointed than the ordinary family house described earlier, with more rooms and better quality of furnishing and a separate kitchen building set away from the main structure for reasons both culinary and practical. She has been here for several years. She came from somewhere to the northeast, a region whose name would mean nothing to most of the people in this settlement, having arrived as a consequence of a military expedition that was conducted before the current reign. She speaks Egyptian with the particular fluency of someone who learned it as an adult, complete, functional, but carrying within it something of the rhythm and accent of a first language that was different. She does not have the same freedom of movement as the woman at the loom or the man with his rope on the plateau. Her days are directed by the needs of the household in ways that are not negotiable. But she is also, in the specific texture of her daily life, not in misery. She is fed, sheltered, clothed, known by name to the people around her, remembered in the small ways that living alongside other people produces. She has a friendship, of sorts, with the woman who manages the kitchen, a relationship of sustained proximity that has, over years, acquired the particular warmth of shared daily experience even between two people whose paths through life have been very different. History does not always give us the whole story of people like this. What it gives us is fragments, a name in a record, a reference in an administrative document, the physical evidence of a living space, the bone density and dietary markers of a skeleton. From these fragments, researchers can infer some things and must remain uncertain about others. What can be said with confidence is that the category of person represented here, the person without full freedom, incorporated into a household or an institution through force or circumstance, navigating a world in which their options are limited in ways that are not of their choosing, was present in ancient Egypt, and was part of the human texture of this place. They carried things. In every sense of that phrase. There is one more room worth visiting before the afternoon arrives and the settlement settles into its midday pause. It is a small, irregularly shaped space near the edge of the administrative area, not quite an office, not quite a storage room, not quite either of the things the modern mind would immediately categorize it as. It is the workspace of a man who is, in the administrative hierarchy of this settlement, not particularly senior. He is a record keeper of middle rank, responsible for a specific section of the accounts, probably something to do with the grain stores or the tool inventory or the daily worker tallies, the kind of record keeping that is absolutely essential to the functioning of the operation and absolutely invisible to anyone except the people who depend on it. He is working his way through a stack of documents this morning, papyrus rolls and limestone flakes and pottery sherds covered in hieratic text, arranged in a sequence whose logic is clear to him and probably only to him. He reads each one with a careful attention that is partly professional and partly, it seems, something closer to genuine interest, as if the numbers and names and quantities in front of him are not merely administrative data but a kind of story, a narrative of what is being built and what it costs and how the cost is being managed and whether the thing that has been planned is actually, day by day, being accomplished. Occasionally he makes a note. Occasionally he sets something aside with the expression of someone who has found something that will require following up. Occasionally he pauses and sits back and looks at the ceiling for a moment in the way of someone working through a calculation in their head, then looks back down and writes. He will not be remembered. His name will not be found on a pyramid wall. His papyrus rolls will not survive to be unrolled in a museum. The work he is doing today, the careful, essential, completely invisible work of keeping track of things so that other people can do other things, will vanish as completely as if it never happened, leaving behind only the structure it helped to make possible. This is the condition of most of the people in this story. Their work is the reason the extraordinary things get built and the extraordinary events happen, and their work is also the thing that leaves the least trace, because what is ordinary is everywhere, and what is everywhere eventually stops being noticed, and what is not noticed does not get preserved in the way that the unique and the magnificent get preserved. The woman at the loom. The boy learning to write. The record keeper with his stack of papyrus. The woman navigating her constrained world with what grace she can find in it. The fisherman who was on the river before dawn. The baker who lit the oven before the sky lightened. They are the majority. They are the weight-bearing structure underneath the visible surface. They are the wet sand under the sledge, the rope twisted from plant fiber, the calculation of angle and alignment, the 10,000 unremarkable things without which the remarkable thing cannot exist. History tends to look upward, toward the pyramid, the pharaoh, the inscription on the wall that someone thought important enough to carve in stone. But the pyramid is made of individual stones, and each stone was touched by individual hands, and each pair of hands belonged to a person who woke up that morning and ate their bread and thought their thoughts and went about the business of a life that will never be fully known. In the weaving room, the loom continues its rhythm. Forward and back. Forward and back. The cloth grows by increments too small to see and too cumulative to stop. The afternoon light is beginning to shift, not yet the golden softness of late afternoon, but something in between, something that is neither the flat brightness of midday nor the warm amber of the hours before evening. The shadows have begun their slow return, stretching away from the bases of walls by degrees that are still too small to watch in real time but visible when you look away and look back. In the street outside, a child runs past the doorway of the weaving room, arms wide, for no particular reason, simply running. Simply a child running in the afternoon the way children run when the energy in them has accumulated past the point where it can be contained by walking. The older woman at the loom glances up at the sound and then down again, the interruption absorbed and released in the same breath. The shuttle passes through the shed. The weft is beaten down. The cloth grows. The light changes before anything else does. It happens slowly enough that no single moment announces it, no clear border between the afternoon and what comes after, no precise instant when the day declares itself finished and hands the world over to the evening. It is more gradual than that, more like a long exhalation than a door closing. The light that has been flat and white and slightly relentless since midday begins, somewhere in the middle of the afternoon, to acquire a quality it did not have before. A warmth. A depth. The limestone of the plateau, which has been reflecting the sun's light back at the world all day in a way that squints the eyes and flattens the shadows, begins instead to absorb it, to take it in and hold it, the way stone holds warmth, and to give back something richer and more amber than what arrived. The shadows return. They have been there all day, of course, every vertical thing has its shadow, but they have been short and concentrated, pressed close to their origins by the height of the sun, offering little in the way of relief or dimension. Now they begin to stretch. First tentatively, then with more commitment, extending eastward from every wall and post and person and stone in long, soft, darkening fingers that reach across the ground and gradually reconnect the world to its own depth. The plateau looks different in this light. Everything looks different. What was stark becomes beautiful. What was harsh becomes gentle. The dust in the air, which has been invisible in the full glare of midday, catches the low sun and turns the atmosphere itself slightly golden, a haze that softens the edges of the pyramid against the sky and makes the whole western horizon look like something that has been painted with deliberate care. On the plateau, the working sounds have changed their character. The pace of the afternoon is different from the pace of the morning, not slower exactly, but more settled, with a quality of completion rather than beginning, of work being brought toward its natural resting point rather than driven forward into unknown territory. The stone that was moved this morning is in place. The marks made by the chisels are finished for today. The measurements taken, the alignments checked, the records updated with the day's progress in whatever system of notation the overseers used to track how far the work has come and how far it has yet to go. The foremen who were sharp-voiced and precise in the morning are, by this hour, simply men at the end of their working day, moving through the familiar conclusion of things with the particular ease of people who have done this enough times that the ending requires very little active management. The workers coming down from the plateau have the particular quality of people whose bodies have been spent and are now being asked only to carry themselves home. Not exhausted in the collapsed, dramatic way of extreme physical distress, but emptied in the ordinary way of sustained effort, the way a vessel empties not in a rush but steadily, by gradual dispensing of what it held. Their movements are unhurried. Their faces are settled. A few of them talk as they walk, but most do not, or not in the animated way of people who have energy to spare for animation. The talk, when it happens, is low and occasional, the end-of-day conversation of people who have been together all day and no longer need to work very hard at being together. Follow them down and then away from the plateau, back into the settlement, back into the residential streets that are beginning now to take on the particular atmosphere of evening, that shift in the quality of domestic life that happens in most times and places when the working hours conclude and people return to their private spaces and the household reforms itself around the fact of everyone being home. The first fires of the evening are already lit. Not the large functional fires of the bakery or the kitchen, those have been managed all day. These are the smaller fires, the household fires, the ones built up from coals or freshly struck from flint for the specific purpose of cooking the evening meal, the one that will gather the household together in the way that the morning meal rarely does, because the morning is a time of dispersal, everyone going in their different directions toward their different tasks, while the evening is a time of return. The smoke from these fires rises in thin columns above the rooftops, drifting in whatever direction the evening air decides, and where the columns from multiple households happen to drift together they merge into something collective, the shared exhalation of a community settling in for the night. The smell of the evening is different from the smell of the morning. The morning had its particular qualities, the coolness and the bread and the first coffee-colored light and the animal smell of the awakening day. The evening has others. There is cooking in it, onions again, always onions, but this time deeper and more caramelized, the smell of something that has been in heat longer, that has moved past the sharp green brightness of the raw vegetable into something sweeter and darker and more complex. There is dust in it, the fine, dry limestone dust of the plateau that has drifted down all day on the prevailing wind and settled on every surface and into every fold of every garment so thoroughly that it is now simply part of the ambient smell of the place. There is water in it, the Nile smell, the green and brown and ancient smell of moving water and river mud that arrives most strongly in the evening when the heat stops rising from the ground and the cooler air drops down from above and carries the river's exhalation inland with it. And there is something else, harder to name. The particular smell of many people in proximity, not unpleasant, just present, the ambient warmth of a community gathered at the end of its day, the human version of what a flock of birds produces when it settles in the same trees every evening, the accumulated warmth and breath and nearness of a shared life. In the house with the grinding stone and the cat and the unfinished Senate game, the family is assembling. The man of the house has come down from the plateau. He has washed. There is always water kept for this, a clay vessel near the doorway specifically designated for the hands and face and feet of the person returning from work, because returning from work without washing is not considered acceptable in a household that keeps its standards. The water in the vessel is brown when he is done with it. He sets it aside. He stands in the doorway for a moment, the same doorway he stood in this morning in the same posture, looking at the same street, but everything about it is different now in the way that the same view looks different in different light, different not because the facts have changed but because the hour has changed and the hour contains different things. The child is still awake. This is perhaps more than would be strictly ideal, given how early the household will rise tomorrow, but the child is one of those children for whom sleep comes not as a release but as a defeat, something to be resisted as long as any alternative remains available. They are sitting near the fire, close enough for the warmth, not so close as to concern the adults, with the clay figures from the morning's play arranged in a new configuration on the mat in front of them, the narrative apparently continuing from where it was left, which is the kind of continuity that children manage with the stories they're telling themselves and adults rarely manage with anything. The meal is simple. It is almost always simple, in the sense of being composed of a small number of ingredients combined without great ceremony, the lentils from the morning pot, now fully cooked down into something thick and soft and flavored with cumin and whatever dried herb the kitchen had to offer, served with bread and a few vegetables, a small amount of dried fish for additional substance. There is beer. There is, tonight, a small quantity of something sweet, a piece of date pressed into a cake with honey, the kind of sweetness that is not an everyday occurrence but appears often enough to be anticipated and genuinely welcomed when it does. They eat on the floor, on the reed mats, in the way that Egyptian families eat, not arranged around a table in formal positions but settled into whatever configuration the space and the people naturally produce, the child between the two adults, the food in clay bowls placed where everyone can reach them. There is not much conversation at the meal itself. The conversation happens before and after, in the low, unhurried exchange of information about the day, the questions asked and answered without particular urgency, the kind of talk that is less about information and more about the simple fact of being in the same space and acknowledging it. The husband mentions something about the work on the plateau, a small detail, not a significant one, just a piece of the day brought home and set down on the mat between them the way one sets down a tool at the end of the shift. The wife responds. The child interjects with something unrelated and is absorbed into the conversation briefly and then gently returned to the margins of it, where children tend to live in adult exchanges. After the meal, the bowls are moved aside. The evening opens into itself, that particular quality of time that exists after the demands of the day have been met and before the demands of sleep have fully arrived, a narrow and valuable corridor of time in which nothing specific is required. Different households fill it differently. Some people visit neighbors. Some return to tasks that the day did not have room for, a sandal that needs mending, a clay vessel with a crack that needs stopping with bitumen, a garment that has been wearing thin at the shoulder for too long to keep ignoring. Some simply sit. In a life structured around physical work and early rising, the simple act of sitting in the evening without anything particular to do is not laziness. It is restoration. The Senate board comes out. It is the husband who brings it, lifting it from the shelf with the particular care of someone handling an object they are fond of, setting it on the mat between them with the small adjustments of a person who wants it at exactly the right angle. The pieces are where they were left last night, still in their positions of mid-game suspension, and there is a brief conference about whose turn it was, a conference that each of them probably already knows the answer to but which serves as the ritual re-entry into a game that has been waiting patiently all day. Senate is old. It is old in a way that the people playing it cannot fully appreciate, the way it is difficult to appreciate the age of anything you have grown up with. It is simply always there, always in the corner of the room or the hands of the children or the conversation of the people who played it last night and are talking about the game they lost. The boards range from simple scratches on a flat stone to elaborate inlaid boxes with ivory pieces and gilded surfaces, but the game itself is the same across all of them. The pieces move along a grid of 30 squares according to the throw of casting sticks, slim pieces of wood, flat on one side and rounded on the other, thrown like dice to determine how many squares a piece may move. The goal is to move all your pieces through the grid and off the board before your opponent does. The middle squares have particular properties. Some are safe, some are dangerous, some force a piece back to the beginning in a way that produces either despair or laughter depending on how the evening is going. Tonight, the evening is going slowly. The throws are considered. The pieces are moved with the deliberate care of people who are not in a hurry and who find in this small, bounded, completely inconsequential competition a kind of rest that is different from simply sitting, the rest that comes from being absorbed in something that is large enough to occupy the attention but small enough that the outcome does not matter. The child, who should be asleep, is watching. Outside, the night has completed its arrival. The sky above the settlement is a darkness that the modern world rarely sees, not the gray-orange murk of a sky lit from below by 1,000 artificial lights, but actual darkness, the darkness that exists when the only lights available are small and terrestrial and close to the ground. The stars in this sky are not the occasional bright points visible through urban haze but something else entirely, a presence, a density, an overwhelming quantity of light arriving from distances so great that the distances themselves are incomprehensible. The Milky Way is not a suggestion here. It is a river, a wide, bright, softly glowing band across the sky that the Egyptians will come to associate with the goddess Nut, who arches her body across the heavens, who swallows the sun each evening at the western horizon and births it again each morning in the east. They understand the sky. They have been watching it for a long time. The stars are not decoration to these people. They are a calendar. They mark the seasons with a precision that the landscape cannot match, the Heliacal rising of Sopdet, the star the modern world calls Sirius, announces the approach of the Nile flood with a reliability that has been observed and recorded and built into the structure of the Egyptian year for longer than anyone currently alive can trace. The position of the stars at night determines the orientation of sacred structures with an accuracy that will still be measurable 4,500 years from now. The movement of the sky across the year is not background. It is foreground. It is a text that has been read continuously for so long that the reading has become second nature, as natural and unconscious as the reading of the weather in a cloud, or the reading of the river in the color of its water. On the rooftops of the settlement, some people are already sleeping. The habit of sleeping outside, on the flat rooftops, on rush mats spread across the plastered surfaces, is not universal, but it is common enough in the warmer months that the rooftops have an inhabited quality after dark, a sense of being occupied living spaces rather than merely the tops of buildings. The night air at this hour is cool enough to be pleasant. The desert releases the day's heat quickly after the sun goes down, a quality of arid climates everywhere, so that the temperature that was oppressive in the afternoon has become, by this hour, simply comfortable. A slight wind moves across the plateau from the west. It carries dust, as wind here always does, but also the absence of heat, that particular sensation of moving air in the dark that is one of the small, genuine pleasures available to any human body regardless of the century it inhabits. A man on his rooftop lies on his back and looks at the stars. He is not thinking about them in any systematic way, not calculating their positions or their trajectories or their relationship to the agricultural calendar. He is simply looking at them in the way that people look at things that are very large and very old and very continuous, the way the mind sometimes empties itself in the presence of something it cannot hold entirely, and the emptying is not frustrating but restful. The pyramid is visible from here, its silhouette against the star-thick sky, darker than the darkness around it in the way that very large solid objects are darker than the open air. It does not reflect the moonlight tonight because the moon is not yet up, or it is thin, a sliver, insufficient. The pyramid simply stands there in the dark, as it stands in every hour of every day and night, patient in the way that stone is patient, present in the way that mass is present, not by intention but simply by being what it is, in the place where it is, for as long as it continues to be. He looks at it for a while. At the pyramid and then at the stars and then at the space between the two, where the sky of Egypt holds everything in its enormous dark arms and the wind moves through it without pausing. Somewhere below, in the house beneath the rooftop, his wife is putting the child to bed. This is its own particular negotiation, conducted every night with the same mixture of patience and gentle implacability on one side and exhausted resistance on the other. The child has been awake long enough that the tiredness has passed through one of its stages and arrived at another, and in this stage it has the quality of a kind of feverishness, a brightness in the eyes that looks like energy but is the opposite of it, a tendency to be moved by small things out of proportion to their actual significance. The clay figures must be arranged just so before the mat is unrolled. A question must be asked about something that happened today, or something that will happen tomorrow, or something that exists in the category of questions that children ask at bedtime because bedtime is the hour when the big questions arrive, the ones about what things are and why they are that way and what happens when they stop. The answers given are short and soft. Not dismissive, the questions are real questions and the child is real, but measured, calibrated to the specific moment, the kind of answers that acknowledge the question without energizing the asker. The tone itself is the answer, as much as the words, a low and steady and unhurrying voice that says, in its quality rather than its content, that the questions will still be there tomorrow, that the world will be there tomorrow, that there is no urgency in this particular hour except the urgency of sleep, which is not urgency at all but its opposite. The child sleeps. This happens, as it always happens, without announcement. One moment the breathing is slightly irregular and resistant, and then it is not, and the transition between the two is so gradual and so complete that it is impossible to say exactly when it occurred. The mother stays for a moment longer than necessary, not from vigilance exactly, but from the particular stillness that descends on a person in the presence of a sleeping child, the way the room seems to become quieter than it actually is, the way the small shape under the linen generates a warmth that is partly physical and partly something else. Then she rises, carefully, and the house settles into its night shape. The oil lamp that was burning in the main room has been turned down, not extinguished, because a completely dark house is not entirely comfortable, and the small flame of a single wick in a shallow clay bowl full of sesame oil provides enough light to move by without producing enough heat to be uncomfortable. It casts the room in a soft, shifting amber, the shadows moving very slightly with the movement of the flame, alive in the way that firelight is always alive, the room breathing with it. The lamp will burn until it burns out. This is not wastefulness, it is simply the nature of oil lamps, which do not have switches or wicks that can be cleanly extinguished without risk of producing a lingering smolder. The oil will be consumed gradually through the night, the flame growing smaller as it goes, until sometime in the hours before dawn it will reach its end with a small hiss and the room will be fully dark for the remaining hours before the morning finds its way back in through the small high window. The Senate board is on the shelf. The game was finished tonight, someone won, someone conceded the final move with the particular grace or the mild protest that losing a game generates, and the pieces have been gathered up and placed in their storage bowl and the board set back in its position against the wall. Tomorrow it will be mid-game again, because neither player likes to play to a full conclusion in a single sitting. The stopping point, the game left for tomorrow, is part of what makes tomorrow worth anticipating. On the Nile, a boat moves slowly northward in the dark. It is carrying grain from one of the storage facilities further south, headed toward a distribution point closer to the delta, part of the enormous logistical system by which the agricultural surplus of the black soil is converted into the sustenance of a civilization. The men on the boat are not sleeping yet. Someone must watch the current, watch the stars, watch the darkness along the banks for the landmarks that tell them where they are on a river they know well enough to navigate by night. But they are quiet. The boat moves without urgency, the water parting around its hull with a sound like slow breathing, the stars above reflected in the water below in long, wavering lines that move and reform and move again with the motion of the current. The Nile does not sleep. The Nile is always moving, always carrying, always arriving somewhere and leaving somewhere else, always doing the slow, enormous work of connecting the interior of a continent to its coast by way of this particular valley, this particular flood plain, this particular arrangement of black soil and red desert that has made a place here for human life in the middle of what would otherwise be inhospitable. It does not know this about itself. Rivers do not know things. But the people along its banks have always known it, have known, in the bones of their culture and the structure of their calendar and the direction their houses face and the prayers they offer at the beginning of the planting season, that the river is the source of everything they have and everything they are. They have built gods in its image, Happy, the god of the flood, depicted with a hanging belly and pendulous breasts to suggest abundance and nourishment, shown bringing armloads of papyrus and fish and lotus, the gifts of the inundation made visible in a single divine form. They have built their cities along its banks and their farms in its flood plain and their cemeteries in the desert just beyond the reach of its water, because the black soil is for the living, and the red soil is for the dead, and even in death the distinction between the river's gift and the desert's indifference is maintained. In the house beneath the rooftop, the man has come down from his stars. He has not come down because the stars are finished. They are not finished. They will be there all night. They will be there tomorrow night and the night after, reliable as only very old things are reliable. He has come down because his body has made its case, quietly and without drama, and the case was reasonable and he has agreed to it. He lies down on the sleeping platform. The mat beneath him smells of reed and dust and the faint human warmth of every night it has absorbed. The wooden headrest settles under his neck with the familiar precision of an object shaped by long use to the specific contour of the person who uses it, not comfortable in the way a pillow is comfortable, but known, which is its own kind of comfort. His wife is already still beside him. The lamp in the main room casts its faint and distant glow through the low doorway, barely enough to be called light, but enough that the darkness of the room is not absolute. The shadows on the wall move very slightly with the movement of the flame. The wind outside has quieted to almost nothing. The sounds of the settlement have settled into their night version, occasional, distant, without the purposeful quality of daytime sounds. Somewhere across the street, a dog shifts and resettles. Somewhere above, the stars continue their slow turning. He closes his eyes. He does not think about the pyramid, though it is there, always there, on the plateau above, growing toward its completion stone by stone and day by day, the project that organizes the entire world he lives in and gives it its particular shape and direction. He does not think about tomorrow's work, or the weight of the rope, or the position of the next block. He does not think about the pharaoh in his painted rooms, or the river moving north in the darkness, or the child asleep in the back room with the clay figures arranged around the mat. He does not think about anything in particular. The lamp in the other room burns down by another small degree. The pyramid stands on the plateau in the starlight. The Nile moves. And in the narrow, quiet, ordinary dark of a mud brick house at the edge of the ancient world, a man who built things that will outlast everything he knows goes gently to sleep, the way people have always gone to sleep at the end of the day, with relief, and with the unspoken faith that the morning will come back, as it always has, and the world will still be there when it does. The lamp has gone out. Sometime in the hours before dawn, in that particular depth of night when the darkness is at its most complete and the stars have wheeled past their highest point and begun their slow descent toward the western horizon, the flame reached the end of its oil and gave a small, final hiss and was gone. The room it had been warming with its amber light is now simply dark, the way rooms are dark when there is nothing left to soften it. The shadows that had been moving on the walls, alive with the breathing of the flame, are still. The objects in the room, the grinding stone, the Senate board on its shelf, the clay figures in their bowl, the headrest worn smooth by years of the same neck in the same position, are present but invisible. Known rather than seen. Held in the mind rather than in the eye. This is the deepest hour. Not midnight exactly, that is a modern division, a human imposition on the continuous movement of the night, but the hour that feels like midnight everywhere and in every time, the hour when the darkness has reached its fullest extent and the world is as quiet as it ever gets. The settlement is still. The plateau is still. The Nile moves in the darkness to the east with its patient, continuous murmur that is present beneath every other sound this valley produces, even now, even in the silence that is as close to absolute silence as this place ever reaches. The pyramid stands. In the darkness it is not quite visible, even its enormous mass resolves, at this hour, into something that is less shape than suggestion, a denseness in the darkness, a place where the stars stop. But it is there. It has been there through every hour of this long day and this long night, and it will be there through every hour of tomorrow and the day after and the decade after and the century after that, and the centuries after that, stacked and accumulated beyond any duration that the people sleeping beneath it tonight could meaningfully imagine. Stone does not age the way flesh ages. Stone does not forget the way flesh forgets. Stone simply continues, mineral and patient and indifferent to the passage of the time that it outlasts. But stone does not build itself. This is the thing that the pyramid, in all its inhuman permanence, carries within it, the memory of hands. Not in any mystical sense, not in any way that makes the stones themselves conscious or the structure itself alive. But in the simple, physical, traceable sense that every stone in this structure was touched by human hands before it was set in its place. Was quarried by a copper chisel held in fingers. Was moved on a sledge pulled by ropes gripped in palms. Was aligned by measurements taken by eyes and checked by minds that understood what alignment meant and why it mattered. Was set into position by the combined effort of bodies that ate bread and drank beer and slept on reed mats and played senet in the evenings and looked up at these same stars on warm nights from their rooftops and thought whatever it is that people think when they look at stars. Every stone was touched. 2.5 million stones, and every one of them was touched. Dawn is still some time away. The sky above the plateau is not yet showing any of the signs that preceded, no softening at the eastern horizon, no shift in the quality of the dark, no suggestion that the cycle is preparing to begin again. This is still night, fully night, and the world is resting inside it with the total surrender of things that have spent the day entirely and have nothing left to spend. Let the night continue for a moment. There is no hurry here. There has been no hurry anywhere in this long, slow walk through the hours of a world that no longer exists in the form that it had then, that has been covered and uncovered, preserved and lost, reconstructed from fragments and revised with each new fragment, understood partially and misunderstood often and approached with instruments that are sometimes equal to the task and sometimes not. A world that is, in the most important sense, irretrievably gone, and yet somehow not entirely gone, the way things that are genuinely important to human experience are never entirely gone, because what is genuinely important to human experience has a way of persisting in forms that are not always immediately recognizable as persistence. The bread made in this bakery is gone. The baker is gone. The clay bowls and the reed mats and the wooden headrests have mostly gone, Wood does not survive the way stone survives, and organic material in general is at the mercy of time in a way that limestone is not. But the recipe for leavened bread, the general human knowledge of how to coax grain and water and wild yeast into something that rises and browns and nourishes, that is not gone. The game played on the Senate board has mostly gone. The specific rules are not entirely recoverable, which means that the exact game played in that house last evening cannot be fully reconstructed. But the impulse to sit across from another person in the evening and contest something in a bounded and agreeable way, the pleasure of that specific kind of companionship, that is not gone either. The things that go are usually the specific things. The particular name of a particular worker. The exact words spoken by a woman to a clay figure in a small shrine along a canal path. The private calculation of a record keeper sitting alone with his papyrus in a room that no longer exists. These go. They go completely and irrecoverably, and there is a kind of grief in that if one allows it, the recognition that the vast majority of what has ever been thought and felt and done by human beings in all the centuries of human habitation of this earth has simply vanished, leaving no trace that any current or future instrument will ever be able to detect or reconstruct. But the pyramid is still there. Not as the Egyptians of this morning saw it, incomplete, under construction, the workers' village humming at its base, the plateau alive with the percussion of copper on limestone, but as what it became, what it eventually finished being, what 4,500 years of standing in the desert has made it. Slightly shorter than it once was, the upper courses of casing stone long since stripped away and used for other buildings, so that the height has reduced by a few meters from its original extent. The white limestone casing that once made it gleam like a second sun, visible for enormous distances across the flat Egyptian landscape, mostly gone, repurposed, carried away. The smooth exterior that once resolved the pyramid's mass into 4 clean triangular planes, meeting at the apex in a point that the sky received, replaced now by the stepped limestone core beneath, visible and ancient and magnificent in its own right. But still there. Still oriented to true north within a fraction of a degree. Still covering the same 5.5 hectares of plateau. Still composed of the same 2.5 million stones that were put in place by the same human hands in the same sequence of days and seasons that began, somewhere in the distant background of this night, with bread coming out of an oven and a dog barking once in an empty street. Every year, many millions of people come to stand near it. They come from everywhere, from countries that did not exist when this pyramid was built, speaking languages that had not yet been invented, carrying instruments of documentation that would be incomprehensible to anyone living in this settlement tonight. They stand at the base of the structure and look up at it and feel something that is difficult to name precisely but that is recognizable across all the differences of culture and language and circumstance that separate the people feeling it. Something like awe. Something like the particular vertigo that comes from encountering a scale that exceeds what the mind was built to comfortably process. Something like a kind of reaching, an instinct to make contact, across the enormous distance of the years, with whatever it was that produced this thing. Very few of them think about the bread. Very few of them think about the woman at the loom, or the boy practicing his letters on a limestone flake, or the man sitting on the canal wall watching the water, or the child refusing to sleep, or the unfinished game of Senate waiting on a shelf in a house that stopped being a house so long ago that even its ruins have mostly returned to the earth they were made from. Very few of them think about the wet sand poured in front of the sledge runners, or the copper chisel worn to a nub by the end of the week, or the gang name painted in red ochre in a passage that no one was ever meant to enter, left there by people who simply wanted to be known. But all of those things are inside the pyramid too. They are the invisible content of the visible structure, the human life that was spent in its making, compressed and enclosed and preserved not in any material form that can be extracted or examined, but in the simple fact of the structure's existence. It is there because they were here. Every morning they were here, and every day they did what the day required, and the days accumulated into years and the years into the finished form of something that has now been standing in this desert for longer than the entire span of recorded Western history from the fall of Rome to the present moment. They did not know it would last this long. No one knows, when they are doing the work of their ordinary days, what will last and what will not, what will be carried forward by the river of time and what will be lost in it, what will surface in 4,000 years as evidence and what will dissolve into the general silence that covers most of what has ever happened. The workers who painted their gang names in the hidden passages were not thinking about posterity. They were thinking about being known in the immediate and personal sense, by the people they worked with, by the overseers who assigned them their tasks, by whoever might come through that passage in the days or weeks after they left their mark. That anyone would come through that passage 45 centuries later, by the light of a torch powered by technologies undreamed of, and read their name, this was not something they could have imagined. And yet, there is something in that, in the impossibility of knowing what will last and what will not, in the way that significance and insignificance are distributed across history with a logic that is only visible from a very great distance and is invisible from inside. The record keeper whose papyrus rolls did not survive is in some ways less known to us than the worker who painted a name in red ochre in a tunnel he thought no one would enter. The official whose monument was built of wood has left less trace than the woman whose grinding stone left a smooth depression in its surface that tells researchers, precisely and without ambiguity, exactly how it was used and roughly how long it was used for. The small, intimate, physical things sometimes carry more than the grand ones. The stone worn by a thumb. The clay figure shaped by a hand. The mark left without ceremony in a place where no audience was anticipated. The sky to the east is changing. It is barely perceptible, the kind of change that you would miss if you looked away and looked back, but that accumulates, if you watch steadily, into something that is eventually undeniable. The absolute darkness of the deep night is softening at its eastern edge. Not brightening yet, not in any way that could be called light, but losing some of its depth, becoming marginally less complete, the stars at the horizon growing fractionally less distinct against a background that is fractionally less dark. The cycle is preparing to begin again. This is what the Egyptians understood better than almost anything, better, perhaps, than they understood individual human lives, which are finite and singular and in some ways resistant to the category of cycle. The cycle of the sun. The cycle of the Nile. The cycle of the agricultural year that the Nile produces. The cycle of night and day, of flood and planting and harvest, of the star Sopdet rising before the dawn to announce the coming of the water. The cycle of life and death and what they believed came after death, which was not simply an ending but a continuation, a transformation, a journey, a passage from one form of existence into another that required careful preparation and the correct words spoken at the correct time by the correct people, but which was, in the end, simply the next season, the next planting, the next flood, the next morning. The men sleeping in the house below the rooftop will wake soon, though not yet. His body knows the morning is coming before the morning has fully committed to arriving. There is some mechanism in the sleeping human organism, old as any mechanism in it, that registers the subtle changes in light and air temperature that precede dawn, and begins the gradual process of surfacing from sleep that will resolve, eventually, in the opening of eyes into a room that is just barely, for the first time, beginning to see. He will lie still for a moment. He will be aware of the familiar weight of the sleeping platform beneath him, the familiar coolness of the morning air on his face, the familiar smell of the house, dust and reed, and the faint trace of last night's cooking, and the clean, dry smell of the linen covering him. He will hear, before he has fully decided to be awake, the first sounds of the settlement returning to itself, a voice somewhere, a door, a fire being urged back to life from coals. He will know, from all of this, without having to think about it, exactly where he is and approximately what time it is and what the day will require of him. He will get up. He will wash his face. He will eat his bread. He will walk up to the plateau in the cool of the early morning, joining the stream of other men doing the same thing, moving through the same streets he has moved through every morning, toward the same enormous structure that will be a little bit larger today than it was yesterday, because that is what happens when people continue to do the work. Things grow, imperceptibly and then suddenly, the way the Nile rises. He will pick up his rope, and the day will begin. This is, in the end, the most remarkable thing about this world and every world, not the pyramid, not the pharaoh, not the precision of the alignment or the scale of the organization or any of the extraordinary achievements that make ancient Egypt the subject of continuing fascination across all the centuries that have come after it. The most remarkable thing is the ordinary morning. The bread, the fire, the child who had to be persuaded to sleep, the woman whose hands know the weight of the shuttle without having to think about it, the men whose calluses have the shape of the rope he has been holding for years, the record keeper whose name is gone but whose careful marks made the whole thing possible. The most remarkable thing is always the ordinary morning, and the people moving through it, doing what the day requires, with no particular awareness that what they are doing is anything other than living, and no way of knowing whether any trace of it will last, or what form that trace will take, or who might one day find it and hold it in their hands and feel, across an impossible distance, the warmth of a life that was lived here, in this light, in this dust, beside this river, under these stars. The eastern sky is undeniably brighter now. The first color is appearing, not yet the orange and gold of the sunrise itself, but the precursor to it, that particular blue-gray that the sky produces in the minutes before the sun commits to arriving, as if the sky is clearing its throat. The stars nearest the horizon have gone. The stars higher up are dimming, resolving from sharp points of light into softer suggestions of themselves, retreating back into a sky that is filling with light from below. The plateau catches the first of it. The limestone, pale and massive and patient, receives the earliest light before anything else on the ground does, the way high places always receive it first, the way the pyramid's apex was the first thing touched by the dawn on the morning this long day began. It does not gleam yet. It will gleam in a few minutes, When the angle is right and the light has strengthened enough to produce the particular quality of illumination that makes limestone appear to generate light rather than merely reflect it. But even now it is visible, a pale shape against a darkening sky, enormous and still, present in the way that it is always present, the way it will be present long after this morning is over and long after every morning that follows it. It is still the largest stone structure on Earth. It will hold that distinction for nearly 4,000 years. And when something eventually exceeds it in height, the thing that exceeds it will be a tower of iron and glass that took a fraction of the time to build, which says something, though it is not entirely clear what, about the difference between the world that built the pyramid and the world that built the tower, and which of those worlds understood better what they were doing and why. Perhaps both of them understood, in their own ways. Perhaps neither did, entirely. Perhaps that is not the most important question. Perhaps the most important question is simply the one that the pyramid asks by existing, the one that every object made by human hands asks, in its own register and at its own scale, which is, was someone here? Did someone live here, and work here, and sleep here, and look up at this sky and put their hands on this stone and leave something of themselves in the act of shaping it? Yes. Yes, someone was here. Many someones. Thousands and thousands of them, across decades of mornings exactly like this one, the cold, the bread smell, the dog barking once, the pale light beginning on the stone above. They were here. They ate their bread and drank their beer and picked up their ropes and set down their ropes and played their games and told their children good night and lay down on their reed mats under the enormous dark sky full of stars and went to sleep, the way people go to sleep at the end of every day and every time, with the unspoken faith that the morning will return. The morning is returning now. The sun has not yet cleared the horizon, but the preparation for it is everywhere, in the color of the sky, in the first birds beginning, in the way the air has shifted from the stillness of the deep night into something with a slight movement to it, a freshness, a quality of beginning. The settlement below the plateau stirs with the earliest signs of life. Smoke from a first fire. The soft percussion of a door. A voice, too distant to make out words, calling something into the returning day. If you have been here all night, and in some sense, in the way that this kind of traveling works, you have been, then you have seen what there is to see. You have walked the streets and entered the houses and sat with the families and watched the work and stood in the shrine and listened to the loom and looked at the stars from a rooftop 4,500 years ago, and none of it was as distant as the number of years suggests, because the things that make it recognizable, the bread, the child, the game, the lamp burning down, the men watching water, these things are not 4,000 years old. They are older than that. They are as old as the human capacity for warmth, which is very old indeed, and which the desert sand has not managed to bury entirely, and which this river, still moving in the growing light, carries forward as it has always carried everything forward, quietly, continuously, without making much of it, the way the most important things are always carried. The sun is coming. Let it come. You have been still long enough, in this long and gentle night, that the stillness has settled into you the way coolness settles into limestone, gradually, and then completely, and then in a way that will take some time to leave. If sleep has found you somewhere in these hours, then these words have done what they were meant to do, and the world of Giza in the early morning will be there whenever you return to it, the bread smell, the rope, the loom, the stars, all of it waiting in the quiet place where remembered things wait, patient as stone, warm as firelight. And if you are still here, still listening at the edge of sleep, then let the morning come gently around you. Let the pyramid stand in its first light on the plateau above. Let the Nile move in the growing brightness to the east. Let the man in the house below open his eyes into a day that is, in all the ways that matter, not so different from this one. There is another doorway into the past waiting for you whenever you are ready, another quiet world, another long, slow walk through the hours of a life that was lived completely and is not entirely gone. If this kind of gentle history is what you like to fall asleep to, you are very welcome to stay with us, and another story will be there when you need it. For now, rest. The sand remembers what it covers. The river carries what it carries. And somewhere on the plateau, in a passage that no one has entered for a very long time, a name painted in red ochre is still legible on the stone, the casual, human, completely ordinary mark of someone who was here and wanted, in the simplest possible way, to remain so. They remain. The morning comes. The day begins.